Okay, hello and welcome to the live stream for August 29th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome. We have Kevin and Hooray, Dora. Welcome, welcome. How is everybody doing? Up yours, Narc. Susan, desperate to heal. Maddie, lovely cat. Jay McLaughlin. Torstein asks if we can talk about triangulation a little bit later. We sure can. But you know what? Cool. Concerned customer says, I have my list of questions ready. Fantastic. Before we get into all of this, before I forget, we are doing book club tomorrow night. So 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book that we're going to be discussing is called DBT Made Simple. And I'll put a link down below in the description after this video airs. If you want to follow along in that book, we're going to be talking about kind of what DBT is and some different exercises and what DBT is used for and how we can apply it in our own lives and how we can apply it towards healing and just lots of good stuff. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. New Life from Australia is here. Purple Belt is at work and says, don't tell. Gigi. Oh, very cool. Says, hello, Dana. I thought of you because I just bought myself some new towels and new pillows for my bedroom. It was very empowering. Very cool. I swear it's those little things sometimes just to change up our environment, and that just signals that we're in the next chapter now. Because trauma has a funny way of making us feel like there is no future, that the space that we're in is just going to keep going on, and that pain is just going to keep continuing. And so for those of you that are hearing, oh, how do towels and new sheets help? It's those little things that really do signal to our brain, okay, next chapter. And even little changes in your wardrobe, rearranging your furniture. These things don't have to cost a lot of money. They don't have to cost any money. Just doing little things to reclaim your space, to reclaim your body, to reclaim your life. So, and on that note about moving forward, I shared some of the stuff yesterday on, gosh, yeah, I'm in such a time warp. Yesterday on Angie's live stream over on her channel that we also do, we alternate channels every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, either my channel or her channel. So this coming week will be on my channel. Last week was on her channel. Anyhow, we're going to be putting together a vision board. And so for those of you that are not familiar with the concept, it's basically where you find a bunch of images or words or things in general that kind of represent the direction that you want to be heading and kind of what you would like to see visualize in your life. And one of the biggest takeaways I've ever had came from a podcast, a random podcast I was listening to about a year ago about vision boards. And the gal on there had said that she realized with vision boards that it wasn't so much the stuff. A lot of people will put things on a vision board like, oh, I really want like I don't know, like a brand new Mercedes or a trip to Paris, like things that people think might be nice to have, right? But she said that she found that it's not so much about the stuff that we put on there. It's about the way that we think those things will make us feel. And I just thought that was one of the most profound things I'd ever heard. And I agree with her completely. So now in going about creating a vision board, thinking about, okay, what is kind of pulling towards you? What would you like to have in this next chapter of your life? And so here's some images. I have 3 that I printed out, and I'm going to be finding 2 or 3 a week. And I'm going to start, I need to get a big thing of poster board, and I'll start putting them up here behind me. So you guys can just kind of see, I don't know, just have an idea of what a vision board looks like. And of course, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Your board may look very different than mine, and that's totally okay. So the first picture I have is of this woman who is standing in a field. Her arms are stretched out, and she's just watching the sun and just kind of watching the clouds and being fully present in the moment. And so for me, this picture has to do with just really being fully present in the moment and just loving, like making peace with the present moment and just being fully in it. So often, excuse me, so often, in my own life, I keep delaying things, delaying happiness, delaying contentment, delaying fun. Oh my gosh, I'm so terrible about this. Putting things off, thinking, someday when this next book is finished, then I'll make time to have fun or to relax or to be happy. Or once we get the house back in order, then down the road, then I'll wait. And that's it's a terrible, difficult way to live, because there's always going to be something. And it's very rare that everything kind of aligns. So it's important, I think, that we enjoy our lives on a day-to-day basis and a day-to-day moment. So we're finding things, making the present moment our friend as much as humanly possible. And this is possible even if you're fresh out of an abusive relationship. I know the thought of making the present moment your friend can seem absurd at best. And I just want you to know that it is possible, that these things, that the pain of certain events in your life can exist, and so can gratitude and planning for the future and thinking and acknowledging about all the good in your life that's still there, and taking time to just be fully in the moment is so huge. That was a really, you've heard me talk about this before, a really big aha moment for me. The old me used to think that I lived life more like a roller coaster. Like there were ups and then there were downs. There were good moments. Oh, yay, I lost 10 pounds. And then there were bad moments. Oh no, I got a parking ticket. And then, oh, yay, I got, something new happened. Oh, I published a book. Yay. And then later on, oh no, I accidentally broke my favorite coffee cup. And it was just this constant up and down. And then when I realized, that was, I think, one of the kind of diamonds I was able to make out of my situations, was to realize that life is less about a roller coaster and it's more about a train. It's like you're on a train, and it depends on which window you look out of. On one side, there's and both sides are equally valid, right? And so realizing, okay, yeah, all of this pain, this abuse, the feeling emotionally devastated, the overwhelm of trying to rebuild your life, that's all very present and it's very valid and it's there. But we can also, and I would encourage you to do this, to take time to focus on looking out the other side, the other window in that train, and to focus on taking time for gratitude, the little things, a hot shower, a nice cup of tea, a bed to sleep in, the food that you do have in your refrigerator, the people that are quality that you do have in your life, like these things, and just start making a list. Gratitude is the best antidote to fear and the best antidote to anger and rage and pain. It really, really is. So anyways, that was that one picture for me. The next one is a lady standing, and she has one arm raised in like a victory pose. And this picture to me just represents confidence and just that kind of can-do attitude. And confidence is something that I really struggle with. I felt this way for many, many years, decades, probably all of my life, honestly. So I would like to really get to be more confident and get better at handling my anxiety, and just realizing that it's there and it's a part of me. And, taking time for self-care and just, I don't know, practicing stepping into, reclaiming my voice and just stepping into my own. That's a big thing for me. Okay, let's see. Oh, JCat, thank you for the live stream donation. And JCat says, thank you, Dana, for the validation and support and helping me to heal and feel normal. I am so outrageously thankful that I've been able to be a part of that. So thank you for letting me know. And thank you for the live stream donation. Okay, so the last picture here. And it is a bunch of words. And so it's on like a chalkboard with chalk, and it just says, hello, come right in, have a seat, welcome one and all, be awesome, howdy, hey, just kind of, I don't know, just words. And I would really like to have more, spend more time with friends and just in that sense of dinner parties and having people over and just engaging more. Because again, I really struggle with this idea of, well, I don't have time for that. And it's the anxiety. It's the anxiety talking, thinking like someday when we move back into the house, or when I, finish this book, or when I, whenever, lose the weight, or, it's always an excuse as to not do it. And so I would like to change that and just be in the moment and take time to celebrate things too. That's another thing I'd like to work on, is celebrating the small wins in my life. So with that said, thinking about for you, what are some images, what are some words that you would like to bring forward into this next chapter in your life? And a great way, so how I found these pictures, I just went on Google Images and I just did a search for different things like confidence, or peace, or friendship, or community, these kinds of things. And I saw what images came up. And then I got a couple of them. I called my local neighborhood Kinko's and said, hey, if I send you guys some stuff, can you print them out for me on color? And so I did. So it cost me, I don't know, like $1 or so per color print. And then I just went by and picked them up. So it's pretty easy to do. Pinterest is another great website if you're looking around for things that, for your vision board. Pinterest is a great site. So let's see here. Okay, Maddie says, I've been 6 months, no contact. I have no regrets, but I'm so paralyzed. I don't feel like doing anything, not cleaning, not dusting, nothing. Also, I've been so social all my life, but not anymore. So the way that you're feeling is something that I think a lot of us struggle with. And it's going to depend on what you think might motivate you to kind of get out of this. So the wanting to isolate, the feeling depressed, the feeling in a funk, the feeling overwhelmed by all of this, totally normal. Sometimes it can help to get out of that funk. There can be a number of things. One, you might want to see, since it's been a while, to possibly go talk to your doctor, or see about getting potentially on some sort of antidepressant. That can really make a huge difference. If that's not something that you're interested in doing, or in addition to that, doing things that really foster your self-care. So as far as like your environment goes, what has worked for me is I set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll focus on one area. So it might just be cleaning out my car. I would encourage you to focus on an area that you can make a lot of progress in like 10 or 15 minutes, like your bathroom, or your car, or your bedroom, just making your bed. These little things can it starts to build momentum, and then it can be easier to kind of keep that momentum going. As far as like getting out and getting back out into the world, this is another thing. A lot of people, myself included, think, I'll wait. Someday when I feel like it, that's when I'll go out and I'll start hanging out with friends again. But a lot of that is it's the overwhelm and the depression and the anxiety and all of that talking. And I will tell you, one of the biggest gifts that I gave to myself was forcing myself to go out. And I joined a bunch of meetup groups, meetup.com, one of my favorite websites. You guys know this. And I would encourage you to join like any group that even sounds remotely interesting. They might have a UFO hunter group going. They might have people with dogs that get together and go to the dog park on the weekend. They might have a group where people do meal shares, or they play cards. Out here in Michigan, people are really big into euchre, and so there's euchre groups. Joining different groups like that, and then really making an effort, even if you don't want to go. I think that's such a big part in healing is realizing, making that mind shift of the thought of I need to wait to heal and then I'll start living my life. It's the other way around. It's really like once we start living our life, then it helps to accelerate our healing. So I kind of view getting back out there, and I'm not talking about dating, I'm just talking about getting back out there, being social, being around people. It's healthy for people to be around other people and to just get out of your own headspace. And even if it's around a bunch of strangers, it can still just make a big difference with your mental health. I really view it as almost like a form, like mental therapy. We have physical therapy. Like if you break your leg or something, physical therapy doesn't feel good either. It's often incredibly painful. Anybody if you've ever thrown your back out and you've had to do physical therapy, you're just, tears are springing to your eyes because you don't want to have to do these exercises. You're in so much pain, but you know that it's going to be for your greatest good. And oftentimes this kind of like mental therapy of forcing ourselves to go out, to interact with people, even if you just sit there and you just smile and nod all night long, can do a world of good. Just getting out of your space. So healing is oftentimes it's not just one thing that we do. It's a multitude of things. It's that what we were talking about, reclaiming your space, moving your furniture around, taking 20 to 30 minutes and creating a playlist of some of your favorite songs and putting them on your phone. Or if you don't know how to do that, you can go on YouTube and probably find the videos to your favorite songs, watching them. Making time to get out and be social, even if you don't feel like it, making time to get outside, making sure if you're isolating, taking vitamin D, if you're not going out, and that kind of stuff makes a huge, huge difference. If you've been feeling in a funk for any length of time, it's worth an appointment with your doctor, or it's worth doing something different, even if you don't want to get on antidepressants. Making an appointment for a massage or yoga, or like doing things that really just nourish your spirit, whatever that might be. Grace says, sometimes it's way more fun just to stay home and redecorate my house. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Cynthia says, I need permission to just smile and nod. I might be able to do that if there's no pressure to make a splash. Yes, absolutely. There is no pressure. I think what you'll find in meetup groups is that they tend to be full of a lot of people that are at some sort of transitional stage in their own life, whether it's the death of a spouse, they're new to town, they recently went through a divorce or a breakup, or they're really looking for people around a certain topic. So I've never experienced a meetup group where there's been really any pressure of any kind. You're in total control. You can always get up and leave. There's no pressure. So, yeah. Oh, I like that. Very cool. New Life says, I couldn't find a meetup group I liked, so I started one myself. Best thing about starting one myself is that it forces me to go. Yes, I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And new meetups start all the time. So if you don't find any groups that really resonate with you, or if you're like, I don't know if I can handle starting up a meetup group, keep checking back, because there's just, like I said, there's groups that start up all the time, and it can just be really fun. Up yours, Narc says, Dana, I feel so strongly that I need to tell my story, but I'm stuck between the terror of the backlash and the fear of no one ever knowing. How did you get the courage? That's a great question. And I was very open about my story, my experiences. In large part, I didn't think, well, first off, I live 26 hours away from both of my exes. And so that was a lot easier. I don't feel physically like I'm in danger. Second, we're all older. I'm 41. They were like almost, each one was about 9 years older than me. And they're not real tech savvy people. So I never worried about them really finding me on the internet and any of that. I also didn't think that other people would really watch my videos. I didn't know a lot about YouTube or how that worked. So I just made a bunch of videos with no expectation, and I just kind of put them out there. So all of this has been very surprising for me that people have found them. And had I known that it would grow into all of this, I would have approached things very differently. So if you do go public with your story, it might be, I think it would be a really good idea to change names and potentially change your own name. And you don't have to film your face. You can always start off with like putting the camera on like a house plant or something, and then it's just your voice. So it's whatever you're comfortable, but I definitely would change names just in case there's like legal stuff down the road. I'm pretty open now because it's like, it's out. There's nothing I can really do. And if I end up getting contacted by an attorney, then so be it. I mean, I guess I had to make peace with that, but I did lose quite a bit of sleep, like probably the first year and a half of all of this, because I didn't anticipate, it was never in my intention to like, to try to like necessarily out either Jack or Steve. I never use their last names. I'm pretty vague about certain details. It was more about me just sharing my experiences. Another thing about sharing your experiences that I think is important to cover is people know on some level, if you put yourself out there on the internet, you're going to get hate and you're going to get criticism, and you're just going to attract you have no control over who finds your videos. And I knew that kind of going in, like, yeah, there's going to be some haters or trolls or whatever. I had no idea, like to the extent that that stuff exists, and that I would have such a hard time with it. I will say it does get easier with time. Like now comments, I just roll off my back. I don't even think about them. I mean, 30 seconds after I read them, they're gone. Like I don't dwell on them. I for sure don't let them ruin my day. Back when I started, those kinds of comments were a massive contributing factor to my anxiety and my depression. And, I had a really difficult time functioning because of some of the stuff that was said. And then it also spun me into this whole weird headspace of, because then, you get people that are they're like, oh, well, you're a narcissist and you're this and you're that. And then it's like, oh my gosh, oh no, am I? Like, am I? I mean, and then it just puts, so I don't know. Like there was a lot of a learning curve there, and having to kind of really do a gut check with your intentions and who you are as a person and in all of this. So just know that if you can find some support for what you're doing, then that can really be worth it. There's a lot of different like YouTube groups out there and stuff that can be, beneficial, because other people that are not on the receiving end of so much hate and venom, they'll just tell, oh, it's like with any other form of abuse, right? They're like, to them, it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's like, well, you're not on the receiving end of it. So you're not emotionally invested in it at all. But when someone's really coming at you, it's hard to not get knocked off balance and to go to like kind of a dark place. So just some things to consider. Okay, let's see here. Let me look and see. My friend here sending me some questions from the chat. Okay, Siobhan, great question, asks, how do we know when we no longer need to view sites like this? I am concerned that I may be using this stream and others as a crutch, thereby prolonging my healing process. I feel stuck. Really valid question. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with this site in general, is to take at least the first hour or so of the stream, because everybody's at different stages of healing and understanding. And I think it is important, and it's hard to say like when people start to transition like through stages. But I would say, I think a lot of it's just really based on kind of how you feel. I think some people come back here periodically just because maybe they find some sort of comfort that's like a regular thing that we do every single Wednesday. Some people want to come here and they want to discuss boundaries, or they want to discuss different skills they're learning, like with assertiveness, or just getting support with staying no contact, these kinds of things. I think it's turning inward and really paying attention to how you feel. If you're leaving these live streams or any of these types of videos, and you're feeling maybe heavier than when you came in, or you're just feeling like, I think I need different information at this different stage in my healing, to really pay attention to that and kind of let that guide what you do. So my focus is really shifting. Like, I'm all for answering questions. I totally understand people need that. They have that need for validation, and figuring all of this out, that's a very real stage. It's the first stage that I think people are in. A later stage in healing tends to be when we are more focused on us and kind of that self-examination of our own boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and kind of what's next in our own life, and sharing our victories, and hopefully having less toxic people in our life, or if they do show up, we're addressing it and handling that sooner than later. These kinds of things. So I hope that answers your questions. If there's anything kind of thriving wise that you would like for us to discuss on here, let me know. I've got a friend who's in the chat. She's taken pictures of questions, and then we can see about addressing that. So if you have any video ideas or topics or whatever, and that goes for any of you guys, let me know. Let me know in the chat or in the comments, and I will see what I can do. Okay. Here's another great question. Concerned customer says, how do you start believing you have value if you don't currently believe that you do? How do you find value in yourself outside of just your accomplishments and feedback from others? That's a great question. I think it's the realization that anything living has value. There is truly only one you. And so we each have things about us that are just inherent to you, and realizing that you just being alive and being on this planet, you bring value. There is only one you. And I think it might take a little while to fully understand that. Like, we all have strengths and weaknesses. There's things about, like I said, there's things about you that just make you uniquely you. And besides that too, like any living creature just has value. because they're here. So I would say maybe working on some affirmations and really trying to get that to sink in. And like, you matter. I mean, you matter. You have the ability to impact your environment, hopefully positively. You're here, human beings, I think in general, we are here to become like the highest and greatest expression of who we are. That's kind of the core of evolution for any species. And that's what makes humans so different than other animals. A lizard can only, the highest and greatest expression of a lizard only goes so much, right? Because lizards are just kind of lizards. and even monkeys, like monkeys are just kind of monkeys, like, but somewhere along the line, like we jumped that gap. And now as people, there's things about you, like you might you have certain strengths and talents and things that are you. And that's the purpose of all of us being here, is to figure that out and to just pour our energy into becoming like the highest and greatest expression of who we are. And what makes that so fun is that we're all so different. Like, you've got people out, I think about this all the time. Whenever I come across like some show about like scientists or mathematicians that have figured some stuff out, I'm like, man, seriously, I'm so glad that there's people like that exist, because that's just amazing. And that is a million miles away from how my brain works. And so good for them, because, you do it. Like, you just run the ball down the field, because I am not going to be any help in the math and sciences area, And so thinking about, okay, like, what makes you uniquely you? And really do some soul searching for that. There's tons of videos on YouTube that have to do with affirmations, and that can really be worth watching, listening to on a regular basis. I did a affirmation video. I'll find a link to it here in a second. CPTSD affirmations video. Let me get it here. And that is full of relaxation music and affirmations and all kinds of things. And with affirmations, it's an ongoing thing. I think that's been one of the things personally that has had the biggest positive impact in my life, has been affirmations. And it's amazing. I will find, every now and again, I'll find cause I used to write my affirmations on index cards, and I used to keep a set in my purse and then by my nightstand. And I, every now and again, I'll find them, and it's amazing. Some of the affirmations that I had from 10, 15, 20 years ago, even. And now it wouldn't even be something that I would need to affirm. Like, it's amazing how you just kind of steer into that once you really start believing that it's possible. And I would say too, the whole like vision board thing, like we were talking about earlier, can also be a really powerful part of that, of really getting clear on like what's next, what you want in your life. And I think you'll find, if you can get in the habit, this is something that I'm working on too, get in the habit of creating a vision board on maybe at least like once a year. And then, and don't throw them away. If you do throw them away, take a picture of it so you can go back and see, oh my goodness, that's where I was. Like, these were my dreams all these years ago. I had a vision board from like 7 years ago. I don't know if I still have it or if it was something that was lost in the fire, but one of the pictures was, I really wanted, at the center of the vision board is, I wanted to be a community health nurse, and I wanted to talk about mental health topics. And that seemed like a very distant dream, that I would never be able to do that. I didn't know how to begin doing that. I didn't, that was my equivalent of like buying a Mercedes or like going to Paris, like some sort of seemingly faraway dream. And I feel like I'm doing that now. And that's just really, really a cool thing. But I spent every day really looking at that board and really thinking about that. And here's the thing too with vision boards is it's like I was mentioning earlier, it's very rarely about the stuff or the achievements that we think will make us feel a certain way. It's not that. Like for me, it wasn't like I could get the title of community health nurse, right? It wasn't the title that I wanted. It wasn't the job position. It was really it was the impact that I thought I would be able to have in this life and what I felt I was being pulled to do. So it was that feeling, it was more of I was looking for that feeling of kind of living a life of purpose on purpose. So when you go about creating your vision board, thinking about these things, if you're finding, and it's okay to put on your vision board a brand new Mercedes and a trip to Paris. That's totally fine. There's, like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do this. But oftentimes it's the emotion that we think that might give us. So for somebody going to Paris, it might be the feeling of adventure or, and it's really, why are you seeking out that adventure? Like what do you think adventure would give you? Maybe it's a fresh start. Maybe it's a much needed vacation. Maybe it's just something new. These kinds of things. So I think the finding value in ourselves, appreciating ourselves, in large part, it stems from really building a life that we love. And a great way to start building a life that you love is to think about it consciously, about the emotions that you want to feel on a regular basis in your life. So just side note real quick, my brother is also really big on making vision boards. And we were talking about this a while ago, and he had said, oh, this girl he had dated about a year ago, she was awful. She was nothing but trouble. I was so thrilled when he finally like just got rid of her once and for all. She was just something else. And he had thought he had put a picture of like this real fit bikini, good looking girl on his vision board. And so she looked almost exactly like the woman that he'd put on his vision board. And it was interesting hearing him talk about that. He's like, well, man, he's like, I really feel like I kind of manifested that in my life. Like he felt like that there was a deeper connection to her than what it really was. That can be the downside of just putting stuff on our vision board. Because yeah, he got the good looking bikini model, but her personality, there was no moral fiber. There was no personality or like character to her. And so we got to talking about it, and I was like, because my brother's a personal trainer, he's super fit. So it would be important for him to find a woman that has the same lifestyle as him. So there's nothing wrong with him wanting like a super fit bikini chick, right? That is a gym rat, just like him. That's what he really needs in his life. But to focus more on like the character behind that. So what he was really wanting was somebody who really eats healthy, who loves to work out, but who's also like honest and caring and compassionate and faithful, and who has a solid sense of character. So focusing on the deeper stuff, not just the surface stuff across the board. Okay. Let me scroll down here. Oh, well, thank you. Renee says, hey, I'm late, but I made it. This is my only my second time here. I've been following you, Dana, for the last 3 years. You've gotten me through some really hard days. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are such an inspiration and my hero. Oh, well, thank you, Renee. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that my videos could help, and welcome to the live streams. It's always a totally different experience when you're live than when you're watching them. So let's see here. Meredith says, yes, focusing on the personality traits. Yes, that is a big one. Yes, and welcome to whoever else is here for the first time. I will say the chats do go pretty quick, so that can be a little overwhelming. I think you do kind of get used to it in time, and people in the chat are tend to be great. They help answer questions and give support and the whole nine. So let's see here. Oh, concerned customer. Goodness gracious, you do have some great questions tonight. Okay. She asks, she or he, not sure, he or she. Concerned customer asks, how do you develop intuition if you've always been in your brain and intuitions almost seems to be absent? Okay. Great question. Oh, it's a she. You're a she. Okay, good deal. Intuition, the name intuition makes it sound really woo-woo, and it's not. So I think of it, maybe it will help you to think of it more in terms of instincts instead of intuition. Instincts are primal. They're like the deepest ingrained stuff within us. And so if you think about how human beings process information, we all tend to think that we are logical, reasonable, rational creatures. And most of the time we are not. And we don't process information. So you probably have heard this before. We really have 3 brains and not 1. So if you can think about your brain that way, it can be more helpful to understand, to take seriously your intuition. So our 3 brains have evolved over time. You have your reptile brain, which is just basically the brain that reptiles have. It's very instinct driven. It's fight or flight. It's very primitive. And it screens all of the information that we come across, trying to figure out what can we do with this. Fight. Do we need to fight it? Do we need to run from it? Can we breed with it? Can we eat this? A bush of berries. I mean, what can we do with this information? Do we need to befriend it? Do we need, what do we do with it? Then that information travels up to our limbic system or our mammalian brain. And that mammal brain, or like the dog brain is sometimes called, is connected to your limbic system. And so, or it is part of your limbic system, I should say. So that's your emotional brain. That's the largest part of our brain. And then the top part of our brain is that prefrontal cortex. That's where the logic and critical thinking comes into play. The middle brain, the mammalian brain, connects with your vagus nerve, pretty much touches every single organ in your body. And so this is why when we talk about having a visceral reaction to something, where we might get nauseous, or we feel like we get nervous and have to go to the bathroom, or we just get sick to our stomachs, or we just have this very gut wrenching kind of response, that's why. So that's like the emotional center of our brain. And instincts, human instincts, start really in that like reptile brain, but they are signaled to our body through that mammalian part of our brain. So after that information, and this happens in a fraction of a second. So we get some information, it hits our reptile brain, it hits our mammalian brain, and then it passes up to our prefrontal cortex. That prefrontal cortex, more often than not, is what gets us into trouble, because that part of our brain is trying to figure out if something makes sense or not. And because our brain is taking in so much information all at one time, it doesn't process every single bit of information. It processes things through previous experiences. It tries to kind of chunk information down. It looks for pattern recognition. There's all kinds of shortcuts that our brain takes when it's processing information. When your instincts are being triggered, when you've had that funny feeling that something's off, it's not just your intuition, it's an instinct. And we have that feeling when something's off because something is off. And the hard part, because our logic and critical thinking part of our brain, wants to know, it wants to link up cause and effect. Like it wants that concrete proof that that stove is in fact hot, right? Or that kind of sketchy looking person is in fact dangerous. It wants that concrete proof before we take a different action. Because if we don't have that, then we might feel judgmental or that we're overreacting. And that can really get us into harm's way, because if we're waiting for that concrete proof that a situation or a person is problematic, we're waiting too long. Sort of like if you're a deer in the forest, if a deer in the forest hears a twig snap, its instincts are going to be either to freeze or to run, hopefully to run, because it could be a mountain lion, right? And the deer doesn't think to itself after that situation's over, oh my goodness, was that a mountain lion? Do I have issues with my mother? It doesn't go down this like whole tangent trying to figure out what did it mean? It doesn't have this like existential crisis with like the twig snapping, right? It moves out of harm's way and it just goes on its little merry way, eating berries and doing whatever deer do. So with human beings, that's where we differ, which can be in times of danger, it can really put us in harm's way. I think one of the best books, if you're open to reading a book, one of the best books that captures this is the book, The Gift of Fear. And he talks about doing analysis of dangerous situations. I will say, just trigger warning, there are some stories in there that are like really graphic and disturbing. But he talks about there are these precursors to different events. And it's whether or not we actually have them register and we get out of harm's way. So like, I'll give you an example. One of the examples he talks about is they were studying a office, like workplace shootings, workplace violence. And then the other situation was mail bombs. I'll cover these two real quick. Super interesting. So the workplace shootings, what they were finding is that right before, when gunshots started happening, people would often joke that hadn't seen the shooter yet. They would say, oh, I really hope that's not, Scott Smith or Sarah Smith who got fired on Friday coming back to shoot up the place. And a lot of the times, sure enough, it was that person that got fired, or the person that they thought it might have been coming back to shoot up the place. And so there's certain things, our brain has a hard time processing information when it really thinks that we can be in danger. It's like a psychological defense. And so one of the ways that we tend to process it instead is we use dark humor like that. Like, oh, I hope that's not Scott Smith shooting up the place. Like dark humor. We joke about things. We might even say that something is off, but then we continue doing it. So another example was with mail bombs. They found that, again, the vast majority of times people would get mail bombs and they would even say, boy, this sure looks like a mail bomb. And then they would open it anyhow. And sure enough, it was a mail bomb. And when they were analyzing, talking to the survivors of these events, people really just thought, yeah, what was wrong with that? What was so wrong with us? Like, we knew something was off, but we went forward with it anyhow. And we opened the package anyhow. And one of the reasons being is it's just we have a hard time processing that we could actually be in that kind of danger. And people are often afraid of overreacting. And then there's also this term called irrational invincibility that we all have, where we think that kind of stuff happens to other people. And so we're in shock when it happens to us, because every person thinks that they would be able to assess a threat appropriately and be able to move out of harm's way. And the vast majority of people are wrong about that. So it really comes from the best way to get in tune with like your instincts is to realize the different ways that they signal to you and to just err on the side of caution. So I've talked about this before, but that was one of my big lessons learned in all of this with the two problematic men in my life. It was both times I felt like this flutter inside of me, this nervousness and perpetual confusion that led to mental anguish, and it felt like something was off. But I felt like I was being too judgmental if I just broke up with them because of how I felt. And the new me doesn't, my new deal breaker is I don't do perpetual confusion. I don't do mental anguish. I don't like feeling a flutter inside of my body like that. So it doesn't even matter. I don't even need to stick around to tell, are they indeed out to harm me? It doesn't matter. I distance myself because I don't like feeling that way. And I don't feel that way around a lot of other, like the vast majority of other people. So it tends to be only people that are insincere or that have been problematic in my life have led me to feel that way. So I want peace in my life. So I just steer clear of that. So this is the point being, this is why it's important to trust your gut. It's not just a kind of a woo-woo kind of thing. It's there. It's an instinct. It's in every single person. I don't think that you can really get away from it. If you've been used to living your life, like I think a lot of people have, where you're using only, or I shouldn't say you're using only, you're only in tune with that logic and critical thinking part of your brain, you're missing out on a lot of how you're perceiving situations. Our emotions aren't just the way we feel. They're oftentimes a really big indicator as to as to how to perceive just situational awareness and the environment around us. So it's important. And I think, especially I think a lot of men and very logical, kind of more math-minded, science-minded people really struggle with this because they feel like it is, oh, that's just kind of new agey or woo-woo, and it's not. This is something when you talk to Border Patrol agents, FBI, people that are trained in like body language, crime scene investigation, interrogations, these kinds of things. It's very rarely you get concrete proof. It's more about you're checking the scene and you're trying to see, okay, it's those little things that are off. It's the way that if a person makes too much eye contact or not enough. It's the words that they say or the words that they don't say. It's if they're sweating or if they're not sweating. It's if they're just things that might not add up. Those things are all very valid. And it's not that we have to figure all that out, right? Like you don't have to, a lot of this stuff resonates with us on a more like just instinctual level. Like you just get that, and you might not be able to pinpoint it at first of like what you really think is off. And that's why I tell people or encourage them, err on the side of caution. If something's not adding up to you, it's okay. You don't need to sit there and figure out what is not adding up. Get some distance between you and that person. And then if you want to start trying to figure it out, then you can. But I'll tell you too, another barrier I think to actually figuring stuff out is we do have so many, it can, like I said, it can feel judgmental, it can feel rude, it can feel mean or not fair if we're thinking certain things about a person. Or if we're noticing certain things don't add up, we might want to just give them the benefit of the doubt. So let's say, for example, if they tell us that they're a successful, entrepreneur, but yet they show up on our first date in a junked out car and with clothes that haven't been ironed and things just don't add up. It might register as off. And we might think to ourselves, well, but who am I to judge? And I don't want to, I've been there too. And my car's normally messy. And we might be quick to kind of gloss over that. And the reality is if there's just kind of this disconnect, especially with meeting people online, people can pretend to be anything online. It can be hard to kind of go with our instincts, but it's not being judgmental. It's just getting some distance between yourself and that other person. In that book, The Gift of Fear, he talks about this, the first scenario in that book, the one that I would say is definitely very triggering. a woman is attacked by a guy who follows her into her apartment building. And he was having her kind of replay the initial event when she met him. And she was like, I just knew there was something off. And then when they went back, but she didn't want to be rude. But when she went back to replay the event, it was a series of things that all, if you looked at each event as a piece or as like the whole thing, it didn't look like there was a problem. But when you combined it all, then it was, yeah, there's something off. So the guy followed her into the building. She'd never seen him before. He was very insistent about helping her into her apartment with her groceries. She didn't want to. He basically wasn't responding to her boundary of saying no. And it was just kind of just the way he looked at her, like the smile on his face. So sometimes it's those kinds of things that register as, ugh, yikes. But if you just think about it, you don't get, we tend to feel like something's off when something's off. So yeah, Ria V says, when I first met him 2 years ago, I felt incredibly threatened for no reason. I just knew. Yeah. Yep. It's just something, it's a good thing to listen to. And I think too, if you can shift it around, really getting rid of that need for concrete proof. And this is a whole different way of living life, right? Like approaching life, because so many people out there are like, no, we need to have concrete proof, or we're just acting emotionally, and just acting emotionally is acting recklessly. And that's not the case. So there's no harm being done if you feel off about a person and you just get some space between you and them. So it's just living your life in a way that other people might most likely will not agree with. And so that's another challenge to this, is just getting grounded enough in yourself to be like, I don't care what other people think or say. If I'm uncomfortable, then I'm uncomfortable. And I don't like feeling uncomfortable, and I don't need to feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to do something about that to where I feel comfortable. I'd given the example, this was, I don't know, 6 months or so ago. I was walking a friend's dog. I was dog sitting for them, walking her dog, and this neighbor guy, older, much older, in his 70s at least, came out, and I had my headphones in, and he was walking towards me. I didn't even see him. I was just zoned out on the dog and listening to a podcast. And next thing I knew it, he was like 4 feet away from me, and he was talking to me, and I took my headphones out, and he wanted to pet the dog. It just struck me. The whole situation struck me as very odd and very uncomfortable. And I wasn't okay with that. And the old me would have stayed within arms, would have just suffered through, would have just thought, oh, he's this older man, he's harmless. Dana, don't be so hypervigilant. Just let him do whatever he's going to do. And it doesn't matter that you're uncomfortable. That's what the old me would have thought. The new me, I was one of those, extendable leashes, backed up to where I stayed about 6 feet away from him. And I was pleasant about it. And, he was petting the dog. And, but I mean, again, like who does that? Like who runs down their driveway to come pet somebody's dog? Like the whole situation was it just gave me a bad vibe. And so he was trying to make conversation with me, and he kept trying to get closer. And I just said, oh, it's just such a lovely day. I must get going. And then I just, kind of yanked the dog, and we just kept going on the walk. And I don't feel bad about that one bit. And I didn't need to wait for him to potentially grab me or say something inappropriate, or even I just didn't need to stay there and feel uncomfortable any longer. Concerned customer says, I can say before I ever heard of this channel or the signs of a narcissist, I said to someone about the narcissist, I just don't believe he cares about me. And when I tell him things, I feel uneasy. Yeah. Those kinds of feelings. I think for a lot of people, what they'll say is when they see that mask slip, when they see that level of like that lack of indifference, it's terrifying. And they'll define it in ways of, it's like looking at the devil himself. It's like this person's a demon. They're possessed. They have crazy eyes. They're psycho. I'm terrified of them. This person I'm scared, and they might not even know why. With more on like the narcissistic side of the spectrum, it's that feeling of, I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. This person just doesn't care. What do I need to do in order to get them to care or to get them to understand their behavior? Why do they shut down communication? Why don't they want to reach a resolution? Why are they so crazy making? Why don't they realize what they're doing? And are they doing this intentionally? And all of these kinds of questions. And so that's another, all of feeling that way. You know, I'm going to talk about really tightening up our standards and our deal breakers for our lives of making, perpetual confusion. If you can if you can nip things in the bud at perpetual confusion and mental anguish, you're going to avoid like 99% of the problematic situations out there. These people are out there. They're in, they can come as friends or family or coworkers or people at your church, people that you volunteer with, neighbors, business partners, people you date, you name it. And so it's understanding how something feels when it feels off and understanding that it's okay to move yourself to safety. Yeah. Meredith says, I think their eyes are constantly dilated because they might be very detached. I think that's part of it. So when people say like, yes, their eyes were black, they just had this like stare, this glare at me. What you're seeing is that fight response in another person. So all of that adrenaline and the epinephrine and norepinephrine that's running through a person's system, their eyes dilate and they become large and black. So it's literally their eyes become large and black. And you're feeling that level, that lack of attachment because there isn't any. When a person's in that fight mode, when any of us are in that fight mode, when we're feeling threatened, when our loved ones are feeling threatened, when we feel like someone's really done us wrong and we go into fight mode, it's just like an animal. There is no love between us and that person. It's because you can't have love and be fighting with somebody. So when that fight reflex response is triggered, it's adrenaline. And for them, because they have no boundary there is no kind of containment of an appropriate response. They don't attach. Narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, they don't attach to people in like a normal, healthy, meaningful way. So there is no attach. Everybody there in their life is just it's like, what's in it for me kind of a thing. Like it's just very fleeting, superficial kind of dynamic. So as long as everybody serves some sort of purpose, once that purpose is served or is no longer wanted or needed, then they're disposable. So you see this, the latest guy that killed his pregnant wife and his 2 children, he just didn't, that was, he didn't want to be married anymore. He didn't want to have a family anymore. And so he just got rid of them. Speaking of which, let me see. There was a message on Facebook. I don't know if you guys saw it. So the guy, Chris Watts, who killed his pregnant wife and his 2 children, it had come out that he had was having an affair. And so people were saying, where is this mistress? We want to hear from her. Why is she hiding? On and on. Well, on Facebook today, a guy, I won't out him, a guy on the Chris Watts page he says, so I wanted to get on here because I've been getting Facebook messages and phone calls from people asking me how I knew Chris, why I had relations with a married man, people trying to blackmail me and threatening to expose me. When I first got the call from authorities due to messages on an app he had on his phone, the last thing I wanted was my name out there. But after all this, I'd rather me tell my side than someone else. I met Chris last summer. We had relations off and on from last June up until March or April. I found out he was married with kids in February. I didn't know that when we first met. Yes, things happened more than one time. Then I ended it. And this stupid witch hunt trying to find his mistress and all of the men and women he slept with is ridiculous. The only thing we're guilty of is trusting a stranger. I can only speak for myself, but before this happened, I would have 100% told you that Chris isn't a murderer nor a sociopath. He told me that he was the victim of emotional and mental abuse and was stuck in a loveless marriage, but was so scared to leave because of his daughters. I can totally understand why anyone who had sexual relations with Chris would want to stay out of the public eye. Since I got the call and was told what happened, I haven't slept more than an hour or two at a time at night. But like I said, the only thing I'm guilty of is trusting someone who seemed so kind-hearted and genuine. But I guess this is a life lesson. I'll always have to live with the fact that I had a relationship with a married man who was also a murderer and a sociopath. So the people messaging me on the internet, I have nothing to hide. I just wanted to put this out there before someone else leaked my name. I'm sure there were multiple women, and I'm probably not the only man he slept with. But the whole thing is that none of the people he slept with owe the public anything. You have no idea what I'm going through. Basically, leave the people that he slept with alone. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to read that is because that's, this is how sociopaths too lure their next target in. That they'll say, oh, I'm going to leave my wife or my husband. I'm just so unhappy. They're so awful to me. They play the pity card. I'm the victim here. And people believe them. It's Missouri Cowboy asks, Dana, King Voodoo asks, what do you do when you are aware of someone in a relationship with someone like Chris Watts? I think I would encourage you to forward them a link to either my channel or somebody else's channel that's on this, or all of our channels that are on this topic. Because I was talking to the admins in my support group today, and they were the ones that had shared with me this post that they came across on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, like that mirrors my experience so accurately, especially with Steve. And when I met him, he was married. And I had told him, I said, I'm not getting involved with a married man. If your marriage is truly over, then you need to leave. You need to file papers and leave before I'll get involved with you. But I don't want you ending something that you may or may not be ready to end because of me. Like, you need to do that for you. He moved out and filed papers like it was nothing. He was so unattached to his wife that I believed everything that he said about their whole situation. He he moved with me to Michigan and then ended up moving back. Like, it was just crazy, the amount of damage that he did in his life, just to win. Like, any normal person would think, a person who would move across the country like that, who would sell their car, who would take all of these actions, they must be sincere, right? No, like, not people like this. And it wasn't until he upped and left And then his wife had contacted me like a month later. Turns out their paperwork never went through. Then we began talking and we start sharing text messages back and forth. And that was when it was wild to sit there and just, he was telling me that he was staying at a friend's house and blah, blah. And she's like, no, he moved back in, and he was trying to get her to adopt a child. And the lies, the level of deceit, the ridiculousness, the, it just was so Lifetime TV movie. He would get up and go to the bathroom, and then she would text me, and she's like, well, he's going to the bathroom. You can expect some text messages from him. And here he is telling me, trying to convince me to move back. And, home is wherever you are. And I love you. I want to have a life with you, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, man, this is nuts. Like, this is beyond nuts. So that's when I talk about people, when you see that a person has no moral compass, when they're lying about major things, when they're cheating, when they're lying, when they're stealing, what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. And, I've never, in all of the people I've ever talked to in the support group or whatever, no one's ever said, yes, everything that a liar has told me has been true. It's always ever been just the tip of the iceberg. You think that they got caught cheating, or they got somebody pregnant. I guarantee you they've been cheating. There's 5 other women that you don't know about. And it's like the same thing with this Chris Watts guy. This guy is so accurate. He's like, I highly doubt that I'm the only one. Like, I'm sure there's a long string of other people. And he's probably right. So, but yeah, that's the thing. When a person's in a relationship like this, they oftentimes, it's that irrational invincibility. This can't happen to us. This happens to other people, right? Only, and I used to get messages like this all the time, where people would ask, they're like, Dana, I'm a guy. Like, how could I be in this kind of a relationship? Or Dana, I am a really strong woman. I'm a CEO. I've been contacted by people that you would be shocked that were in these kinds of relationships. And Dana, I'm this high-powered CEO, and I'm not like quote unquote one of those women that continue to go back to like a cheating guy or a lying guy. And what's wrong with me? And how do I know for sure? This is probably one of my favorite questions, but one of the most common ones is, how do I know for sure that they're a narcissist or a sociopath? And that just speaks more to like, we don't need to know. Everybody's human at the end of the day. There's only just behavior traits. So there's not this grand unveiling that this person's either a sociopath or they're not. It's more of, is their behavior sociopathic? Then yeah, you need to get out of there, because that's not normal. So, but the reason I love that question so much is because it tends to be one of those kind of game changer questions for a lot of people, where that they start to realize that maybe they do have some kind of faulty programming as far as like boundaries and standards go, that they need to tighten up. So, because if we're sitting there kind of splitting hairs between, well, is this person really a sociopath, or are they just a person that like lies and cheats and steals? And it's like, it shouldn't matter. Like, it really shouldn't matter. So, but sorry, that was a tangent. If you have a person in your life that's involved with a person like this, they are going to most likely have a hard time accepting that, especially if they're continually going through that love bombing stage. And it can be very difficult for them to actually see that they're in an abusive relationship, or that this person is potentially dangerous. So they might be more receptive to hearing from, to watching videos, because then they're not being lectured. They're not being, it's not directed at them. It's just a video it's been around. And most people start putting things together. Yeah, King Voodoo says, I just don't want to see her strung out or with another bruise covering the side of her face. I just wish there was more I could do. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to watch a loved one be in an abusive situation like that, especially if it's physical. So I think really letting her, I think one of the biggest things for people that are in abusive relationships, and this is going to be one of the hardest things for you as a friend, is to basically be there and to listen. Because what happens is if your friend starts feeling lectured or pushed into leaving and she's not ready to leave, then what's going to happen is she's just going to shut down and she's going to quit talking to you either completely, or she's going to quit talking to you about problems in their relationship. And so what can help is to just let her know, I love you. I care about you. I'm concerned about you. You know, if you need somebody to talk to, or if you just want me to listen, I'm here. And just be there to listen. And you might want to just reflect back to her, say, you know what, you'll leave when you're ready to leave. So, because sometimes when a person is in a situation like that and they're turning to a person, when any of us in general ask for advice, we're asking for advice because we know what we need to do, but we wish we didn't. And so it's that cognitive dissonance at play. So when a person's caught up in that cognitive dissonance and we all do this, we start asking other people, well, what do you think I should do? Well, what do you think I should do? They're trying to get that validation. Deep down, they already know what they should do. They just don't want to do that thing that they're hoping that the situation can be handled in a different way. Generally, that it can continue to work out, and it can't. So putting it back on her, because if you start feeding into it, if she starts talking about he's awful, I need to leave him, this, that, and the other, and you jump on that bandwagon and you're like, yeah, he's awful, you need to leave him, all of these things, then she's going to start, what happens, that has the opposite effect, because then she's going to start getting defensive and be like, well, but you know what, he's not bad all of the time. And like, you know, it's kind of, he's vegan and I'm vegan and it's really hard to find vegans to date. And she's going to start justifying it. So instead of doing all of that, just keep telling her, like, you know what, you'll leave when you're ready to leave. And if she says, well, I don't know when I'll be ready to leave, then maybe asking her, well, what are some of your, get clear in your mind as far as like, where are your deal breakers? Where is your line in the sand? Because then that way, when that line is crossed, then you will know. But yeah, being hit is a big deal, and that stuff does escalate, and it's heart-wrenching to watch somebody else go through that. Yes, so true. Groovy Sue says outside validation, the downfall of us codependents. Yes. There's so many things, lessons to learn, I think, in all of this. And I think one of the big things for those of us that are more like that codependent side of the spectrum, and when I say codependent side of the spectrum, I think a good way to understand codependency is we tend to really look outside of ourselves we tend to be excessively emotionally or excessively reliant on other people for how we feel. So we need other people to make us feel loved. We need other people to make us feel safe. We need other people to make us feel secure and validated. It's that continual looking outside of ourselves. That's a big part of codependency. Another big side of it is just overgiving, just no boundaries, overgiving of our time, our energy, our emotions. We're giving second chances and 20-second chances. And we're always trying to keep relationships together because we need that we have that excessive emotional reliance on other people for us to feel okay. And for a lot of codependent people, it's when they're not in a relationship, they feel empty. And so then that kind of creates this like cycle of love addiction, of just kind of needing to go from partner to partner to partner in order to feel whole. So it's a problem. But yes, shifting that around and realizing so many of the answers that you are seeking are within you, and start practicing that, of not asking other people what you should do, and instead turning inward and trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do? You know, and that's a big one. Okay, Galactic MC says, how do you feel about someone taking on the male abuser for the female, like engaging the guy who's abusing the female? Is it justified? If you scare the abuser out of abusing the female. Okay, I get what you're saying. It tends not to work. There's a lot of problems with that. I mean, one, then you're potentially looking at charges and jail time, and the female in the situation is probably going to get upset with you, and you're dealing with a guy, an abusive guy, who he's going to hold a grudge, and he's going to potentially become very violent, and that's just probably not going to end well for like anybody involved. And then even if you were to beat this guy up, then when she and he are home alone, he's going to blame her for that. See, you shouldn't be talking to other people about our stuff. You know, look at what you did. And he's probably going to beat her up because he got beat up because she told. So it's a really tough situation. I think really like giving people resources about this, talking about helping them, if you even want to go that route of get clear on where your deal breakers are, mentioning domestic violence shelters, these kinds of things, but then ultimately realizing like we can't control another person. Like they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's hard, you know, it's hard to watch somebody go through stuff like that. I mean, you can always call the non-emergency police and say, this is what's going on and I don't know what to do. And they might be better able to advise you, but I don't know if they can do anything like after the fact. King Voodoo says, she admitted last night that everything in her is telling her to leave, but I keep telling her that I can only give advice. You have to decide. Yeah. And another thing that can help people with leaving is they're oftentimes really overwhelmed by the thought of leaving. They've often made this abusive person their whole life. And they're not only are they getting all of their, you know, they're relying on this person for validation, for love, for attention, for affection. This person really might be like their only real friend. They might feel like this person's their soulmate. There was a TED Talk by a woman a while ago, and I forget her name. She was in an abusive marriage, and she described it so perfectly. She said she never thought of herself as a woman in an abusive marriage. She thought of herself as a really strong woman in love with a deeply troubled man. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. That's so accurate. We think, oh, they're this way because of their childhood or because of something that happened to them, and that my love, I need to give unending compassion and love and understanding and maybe some rehab and religion and therapy. With all of these things together, we can fix this person, and it's my job to fix them. And on the surface, that sounds really compassionate, but that's the kind of thinking that gets people killed. So it's hard to get through to a person that has that kind of thinking, because most people think that other people are like them, that if we can just get through to them, or if we can just make enough compromises and make our relationship work, that everybody must want to have this happy, healthy, well-adjusted relationship. And that's not the case. So it's just a very different way of understanding the world, really. Oh, but what I was going to say with that, so it can be very overwhelming for a person to think about leaving. And so one of the things that can help is to get them to start thinking about, okay, if you were to leave, just hypothetical, that way it just takes the pressure off. Hypothetical situation, if you were to leave, what are some things that you could do? So you could maybe, you could always pack like a go bag and you could keep it at my house. You don't have to leave. If you did, then this way you and the kids would have like 2 or 3 sets of clothes. And maybe in this go bag, you could start putting aside some money. So you could have a couple $100 in there. And maybe we could get some copies of important papers like birth certificates or whatever. We can just have all this stuff here. So if you decide to leave, you have this stuff here. You've got copies of your car keys and, kind of some of the stuff that you're going to need if things get really heated at like 2 a.m. and you've got to just go. And then kind of thinking through, okay, is there some stuff that you can maybe just separate out now? Like maybe you guys could separate out your phone plan or maybe not have this person on your lease or open up a separate bank account or, and obviously this doesn't have to be done all at once, but like just getting them to think through, okay, what could be done? Okay, well, you know what, there's this, let's just call this domestic violence shelter and talk to them and see, how many rooms do they have available and what would that process even look like? So kind of, I think the more you can get a plan in place, even if that plan is never used, it can make a person feel a lot more comfortable because then they're not just going from like one terrifying situation into like the great unknown. And because the great unknown is also terrifying. So that doesn't have to be. Okay. Oh, and by the way, Galactic MC, I looked you up the other week when you were on here last week, in a time warp. And you do have talent. I was listening to your music and you are, I was shocked to find out how young you are. And I just wanted to let you know, like, dude, you're so young and you have talent. And I think patience is going to be just the biggest thing in getting the word out about your music. And I think you're in a good place, right? Like you're in New York. So finding people around you that can possibly like mentor you or work with you is going to be huge. Okay, so that was off topic. Let me see. Concerned customer asks, you have such a calm and peaceful presence. Oh, thank you. I would like to develop that. What are your 5 top tips to develop a sense of calm and peace? Oh, that's a great question. Well, one of the things that helps me a lot is when I talk to bring my voice down, like into my diaphragm, really helps to get me set, something that centers me like super fast. And funny enough, if you watch my earlier videos, my voice came from much higher in my throat because I was so nervous. And I didn't realize that I was even doing that. And so somebody else brought it to my attention. They're like, your voice is horrible. And I was like, oh no, is it? And then I rewatched the video and I'm like, yes, I sound like Mickey Mouse. Like my voice was really high and very high up in my throat. And it was just, I was so nervous. And so now before I do a live stream, I just try to bring my voice down. And it's kind of an unintentional life hack that I figured out is when I do that, it really helps to center me. So that might be something to just kind of practice, feeling grounded, turning inward, listening to your heartbeat. That's something I've been recording my audiobook. And again, I get really nervous and my voice gets shaky and all of that. And so one of the ways I go to get to ground myself is I'll take 5 or 10 seconds when I'm there and focus on listening, like tuning into my heart beating. And so then I'm like fully present in that moment. And then I bring my voice down and get myself centered. Those two things. Yoga is always good. I don't do yoga as often as I would like to, but I'm a huge fan of yoga. Tea. I have this Egyptian licorice Yogi tea. I get it on Amazon. It tastes, if you're familiar with the Aveda tea, it tastes exactly like the Aveda tea. It's delicious. It's super soothing and calming to me. I just love this flavor. So a cup of hot tea does wonders for me, just to kind of bring myself down to peace and calm. And I think too, not that I would necessarily recommend this, but I think one thing I've realized over the years is that there's only so much hysteria that's allowed between any two people. And because people that tend to find my channel tend to be in a panic and they're scared and they're vulnerable. And there's a lot of that kind of, unsettled energy. And so I really do make a concerted effort to try to be calm and just balanced, so I don't get pulled into that energy. And my goal is more to be able to pull people in to my calm and my peace, because I'm not going to be effective if I get pulled into the anxiety. So even though I do get anxious before these live streams, incredibly anxious. But I know that I have to center myself before I go on, or I'm not going to do anybody any favors. So that helps too. So I guess just realizing that holding your space, holding your energy is something that's really important. And that, especially for those of us, if we're used to other people's emotions, like getting pulled into other people's emotions, which I had a pattern of doing that for many, many years. I didn't even realize that was the case. If somebody else was in pain, if they were in crisis, I was very quick to get pulled into that. But once, like I said, once I realized that wasn't effective and it wasn't helpful, then I was much better, to hold my own space and to try to get them to a place of calm. But that kind of stuff, it takes practice. Galactic MC says, what songs did you like? Did you remember? Was there anything appealing to you? There was one, I kind of skipped around on a lot of them just to see, like, you have a really good range. I felt like a lot of your songs were different. There was one that reminded me a lot of, what is his name? Wyclef, Fugees kind of a sound, which I love the Fugees, which I thought was just really cool. Like, you just have a really unique sound and you have a very versatile sound. So I thought your lyrics flowed. I don't know, the way you put together the music and the lyrics is different, but I liked it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you're doing right. It would be really cool for you to be able to somehow connect with some sort of other, like, musical people out where you are. And yeah, I'd be curious to see, like, kind of what they like and like what advice that they would give. Oh, thank Bonnie says, I love audiobooks. I'm glad you're doing them, Dana. Yeah, I love them too. It's such a neat, like, a neat time to live in, isn't it? Like, there's just so much stuff out there, and podcasts. I don't know if you guys are into podcasts, but there's all kinds of podcasts out there, and it's so fun. I just get the biggest kick out of like the things that other people talk about, or that would even think to do a podcast about. Like there's one podcast, what is it called? Like Finding Richard Simmons. And it's just this guy who realized that Richard Simmons kind of disappeared, and he went on this search to figure out like what happened to Richard Simmons. It's this whole podcast about that. There's podcasts about writing, there's podcasts about you name it, and there's podcasts for it. It's just so cool. That's a great tip. Dawn says, I still keep a rock or a crystal in my pocket every day. It's one little crazy thing that keeps me centered, like meditation. Yes, I love that idea. Yes, they even have, well, I think you could do that in a variety of ways, right? So like if you had a crystal that symbolized something to you, or that you felt like, okay, this really kind of helps. A lot of people believe that like crystals help with like, grounding them and kind of keeping them centered, or kind of helping to clean their energy, or rocks that have maybe certain meaning for you. They have worry stones. I'm sure you can buy one somewhere, or you could just make your own, that people will put in their pocket, and you just kind of rub it with your thumb. And it's just a little way to kind of just discharge some of that anxiety that you're feeling. That's a fantastic pointer. Affirmations is so huge that whenever I'm feeling the most anxious in my life, I tend to do a lot of affirmations on a very regular basis, and that grounds me really fast. So that might be something else to just try. I don't know, everybody's different. So you have to kind of just play around with this stuff and see what works for you. And no, James asks, is my friend still here helping me with questions? No, she's not. She took off a little while ago. So if there is a question that I need to answer, please repost it if you could, and I'll look for it. There's a question. I forget who. Ria, there's a question from Ria. Okay, hold on. I think I might have gotten part of it. Hold on, I'm scrolling. James, if you see that question, oh wait. Okay, Ria says, he described in detail on how he would harm someone if I ever cheated. I never cheat, so he probably is. Do narcissists generally get too descriptive and violent thoughts? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think what's more important to focus on though with that is the fact that he's telling you that he's accusing you of cheating. He's threatening to hurt you if he ever caught you cheating. And the fact that you're like, I'm not cheating, I think you're right. He's most likely projecting. He's probably cheating, or at least thinking about it. When you're dealing with like that level of another person doing mental gymnastics like that, where they're accusing you of doing something they're doing, and then they're going to start lashing out and punishing you for things that they're doing, you're dealing with a person who is not sharing the same reality with you. Like, there is no being reasonable with a person who's rewritten reality in their own mind to that level. So I would just proceed with caution. And, if you're thinking about leaving, or if you're moving in that direction, I would start kind of getting a plan together, because that kind of stuff is really scary. Oh, okay. So Galactic MC was talking about fighting off the guy in order to kind of defend the girl with the abuser. He says, I actually did fight the guy. I engaged him. I fought him in defense of the girlfriend. Yeah. And I get it. I would probably, frankly, I'm only like 5 feet tall. I would probably do the same thing. Like that kind of stuff sends me into orbit when I see one person, any, doesn't even matter. Like male, female, young, old, especially if there's like kids or old people involved, that I feel like are being threatened or bullied, like I go into like mama bear mode. So I get it. The problem with that kind of stuff is the unintended consequence is that she might go to defending him and then just be like, oh, it kind of creates this like it's you and me against the world kind of thing. And then she's taking care of him, and then now you're the bad guy and he's the poor victim of the whole situation. So this kind of stuff, it just it's so hard to get a person out of that situation because it's just so they're thinking, and the whole situation is just so twisted up. Paula says, I've been with a narcopath for 8 years and I'm trying to leave him, but he knows where I work. I'm weak when I'm face to face with him. He has a warrant for his arrest, but I'm scared to call the cops. So yeah, that kind of stuff. I think, sometimes if you're truly afraid of somebody and you're like, I really feel like this person could kill me. And or not even that. If you are to the point where you were like, you know what, if I break up with this person, I feel like I'd have to be continually like looking over my shoulder. I wouldn't feel safe. I'm having nightmares. I can't function. All of this stuff. Sometimes, and this sucks, but sometimes it means that you might have to move. And yes, it's inconvenient, and no, it's not fair. And I get it. But sometimes that's really the best thing to do, is to really just kind of move as far away, put as much distance between you and that person as you possibly can. And to just kind of fall off the radar, get different social media, get a PO box, not letting people know your physical address. Like nobody needs to know that, not even your family. So if you've got children and you're putting them in school, you just tell people you only use your PO box. I have a PO box, and so one of the ways, just FYI, if anybody's thinking of doing this, one of the ways that you can get around that, because some places are like, no, we need a physical address. You can give out the address of the post office. So for example, my post office box, if you'd like to send me mail, is PO Box 464, Mason, Michigan, 48854. The address to the post office is 144 West Ash Street. So if I have somebody, and I even have that post office box is in a different city than I live in. So it's nearby, but it's still in a different city. So I try to take these safety precautions with things. So if somebody needs the physical address, I'll say, oh, it's 144 West Ash Street, number 464, which is the post office box number. And I've never had a problem with like credit cards, I get packages delivered there, everything. So that's just something to consider. If I have my friends and family, everybody uses that post office box. Like it just makes it easier for me to have all my mail at one place. But nobody really needs your physical address. So that would definitely be something I would recommend if you're thinking about moving. And I will say, the peace of mind that comes from getting some distance and in just a whole different city is amazing. Like just being able to breathe and not worrying about running into them or their friends or, any of that, or them stopping by your work. It makes a huge, huge difference. But if you do move, it really does help to get a different Facebook account or to not post on your old one, to be really aware of like what information is out there on the internet. So you're not going to be easy to find. It's like you don't want to move to a different city, right? And then say, oh, I just found this amazing new restaurant called The Shed. I absolutely love it. It has my favorite black bean soup. And then boom, now anybody can see, okay, she's in Santa Fe, right? So you want to kind of keep details as vague as possible. Galactic MC says, yeah, it's kind of how the situation unfolded afterwards. I felt bad, but that's the wrong mentality to have, right? I think it was open-minded to think bad of my decision. Yeah, he says it's like a double-edged sword. It's tough. Like, I think there's a big part of me, if I see somebody attacking another person, realistically, I'd probably jump in to help. Or if I was thinking more clearly, I'd probably just call 911. But I would definitely try to help. And that's maybe not the best idea, but that I know myself well enough that I don't think I could not do that. So I think it'd be different if it's like completely unprovoked and you're going to go like jump somebody in a dark alley. Like, like that's a different situation. But even then I can kind of see where people get to that point where they're like, I really want to scare this person into leaving them alone because nothing else seems to work. So it's a tough situation. I'm not a big fan. I don't condone unwarranted aggression, but I think sometimes aggression is necessary. I guess just thinking about do what you need to do in order to keep yourself safe at the end of the day. Meredith says it's crazy how it takes years to acknowledge passive aggressive abuse. Yes, it really is. There's so many wake up calls to all of this where we just start realizing like, oh man, like no wonder this certain thing made me so uncomfortable. Like this person was totally being passive aggressive or making these little jabs and, doing this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, once your eyes start opening to this stuff, it's just a totally different world. And that actually is pretty kind of cool. Terrifying at first, but then I think it's pretty cool because then you're so much better able to like navigate the environment around you. So here's a short story. My brother is really wanting to get into acting and all kinds of stuff. And he had been partnered up with this guy who just was ridiculous, who stole from him, who was, just like, he could not trust the guy. The guy was a mooch. Just real, like just difficult situation. Anyways, they finally had this huge falling out, and the guy ended up, and my brother was so upset. He's like, man, I just want this guy to go away. Like he just doesn't go away. He keeps coming back, and it's with more nonsense and drama and like accusations and just craziness. And he's like, I can't even believe this kid. Like he stole. Like you just would steal stuff from him and then deny it. And he's a crazy maker. And so then this guy had the nerve to get an attorney and to contact my brother saying that my brother had stolen all this stuff from him. And my brother was like, what? I did not steal. What is he? It's the opposite. Like this did not even happen this way at all. And anyways, so they got that resolved. And my brother was so upset about things. And we were just talking about it. And I was like, you know what, though? But the big takeaways in all of this is that oftentimes like these kinds of situations, when you go through them and you can squeeze out as much as you possibly can from them, of paying attention to like when something feels off, or getting better at asserting yourself and addressing these boundary violations when they happen, instead of letting it slide and be like, yeah, okay, this guy stole, $30 worth of batteries from me. Instead of just like letting that slide, like addressing it or getting this person just out of your life. And he was saying he has a really good attitude about it. He's like, yeah, I realized, if I'm really going to get involved in acting, it's going to be full. This profession is full of these kinds of people. And so I really need to learn these lessons and like kind of get this stuff handled and use it for like the next step in my life. And I thought that was a really great mindset to have. Yes. Mary says 45 years, but on my way out. My goodness. Am now seeing the pattern of the lost stuff. I'd projected my honesty onto him, and so I missed the deception until recently. I finally realized I have a bottom line. Yes, there's so many things. Like there's so many things, traits within ourselves that fly under the radar as a problem, because to most of society, it's this idea of, well, just this unending compassion, seeing the best in the other person, forgiving, continually forgiving, giving a person second or 22nd chances, just commitment is forever, these kinds of things. Those are all really great traits and great ways of looking at a relationship within a certain context. To a manipulator, they love those traits because they can just hook us and then just drag us straight through hell, because we just keep giving them the benefit of the doubt and, commitments forever and so on and so on. But yeah, it's important that we have deal breakers and, so that kind of stuff doesn't happen. I'm really proud of you for 45 years and you're on your way out. I think that takes a tremendous amount of strength and courage. So good for you. That is what being brave looks like. Yeah, Shannon's talking about moving and says, when you're afraid for your life, a move across the country seems like a small matter to get yourself safe. Yes, I agree. And I think if you can look at it almost as like, this is you becoming free. This is your break for freedom. And it can be an adventure. It can be a really positive new start. If you can, some domestic violence agencies will even help with expenses, with helping you move. So there are resources out there. You might have to call a couple of different domestic violence shelters if that's something that you're considering, and see, tell them your situation, that you're afraid for your life, and see what they say and what they can help with. Rachel says, I discovered my ex had been actively educating himself on how to use mind control techniques to enslave and fractionate the minds of women. I will never question my intuition again. Yeah. I think really when we feel like something is off, it's because something's off. And that is such a valuable lesson to be learned in all of this, for sure. And yeah, here's the thing too, is these mind control techniques, like all of this manipulation and stuff, once you're awake to it, it doesn't work. So that's the kind of the cool thing about all of it, like really getting grounded in yourself and not seeking validation from other people, and turning inward, and you just, going with your instincts, these kinds of things. And of course it helps to understand manipulation and like, okay, this is triangulation, this is projection, like this is, baiting, this is real. Like, this isn't me being too sensitive. Like, this is actually a thing that manipulators do. So understanding manipulation, understanding all of that really is just, it helps a person level up. You see through the BS so much more clearly. And it's so empowering to see it for what it is, and to be able to walk away. And even if you're around a bunch of other people that want to argue that point because they don't see it the way you do, because they're waiting for concrete proof, or because this person doesn't match up in their mind to like what a manipulator is. It can be so freeing to be like, I don't care. Like, I don't care like what you think. I'm not asking for your validation. I'm just telling you like that this situation makes me uncomfortable and I'm out of here. Sorry. The cat is pouncing on things. What are you pouncing on? Huh? Kitty cat. Oh my gosh. They're doing battle cats. You guys. James says, cats are jerks. LOL. Yes. These cats can be. I took the funniest pictures the other day. They went from like being super cute and posing on the bed. They looked like they were getting like school pictures done. It was so cute. They were just all posed. Hey, hold on a second. You guys, no. Okay. So they went from being super cute. They're battle cats. Can you shut the door? So they went from being super cute. Oh God. They went from being super cute to attacking each other to even being more cute and like bathing each other. Then it broke out into a fight, and then they weren't talking. So it was just a series of the descent of their relationship. It was pretty cute. Yes, Missouri Cowboy says, yes, my cats have a total sense of entitlement. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So cute, but so bad. Yeah, James says, my cats wait until like 11 o'clock at night and then decide they want to run around the house at full speed. We have one of the cats that loves, his nickname is Toe Biter, because he will go after your toes in like the middle of the night for no reason. It's absolutely terrifying. That's like one of my biggest fears, like with the horror movies, when they grab the ghost or whatever grabs a person's feet, like having somebody mess with my feet when I'm sleeping is just like, oh my God, terrifying. This cat will pounce on my feet and and then just start, biting my toes. It's like, it's not good. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, Missouri Cowboy says, yep, the cats may have aspects of NPD. Yes, these little cats are complete narcissists. They're just all about themselves all of the time, but that's okay. They're so cute. And Torstein says, yes, animals can really, really good for the healing process. Yes, they absolutely can. So let's see. Somebody was talking here about their children. Wait, hold on. New Life is talking about it. She would be shattered if any of her children turned out to be narcissists. She says, my oldest child has a lot of mental health issues, and I wonder if my parenting was responsible. So I get it. I think with kids, I think with people in general, is one of the biggest things, because if we are in an abusive relationship, male or female, if a person's in an abusive relationship and the other person is abusive, then our children are also in that abusive relationship. And so but they're coming at it from a different angle because the other person's also their parent. And so they're oftentimes offering up a bunch of justifications and they're minimizing it. And so the abuse that they're growing up in, that to them is just normal. And all we can really do is really focus on setting boundaries, having these conversations with them, boundaries, standards, deal breakers, appropriate behavior, setting and managing expectations with them. And I think it's important to really come from that place of compassion, because if a child's never really had boundaries before, if they've never had healthy boundaries before, and this is the challenge when one person starts to kind of get healthy in a family, is you start to wake up, you start to get healthier, your boundaries, deal breakers, standards, you're working all this stuff, you're making yourself a priority, you're making your self-care a priority, you're starting to say no to other people in the family. It can start to seem like you're being really selfish or self-centered, you're being mean, because before, if you always said yes, then they were always used to getting their way. And so for all of a sudden, for mom or dad to start saying no, it's sort of like, what did I do wrong? Like, you would have said yes to this 6 months ago. And so now you're saying no. And again, so there's just this big learning curve with all of this stuff. But I think it's important to let kids to have, I don't know, I think just to be open about these kinds of conversations about, it's my job as your parent to give you roots and to give you wings. And I love you. I believe in you. I want this, but this is why I'm saying no to this. And, this kind of behavior doesn't fly in my house. Like, I wouldn't talk to you this way. I don't expect you to talk to me this way. Like, that's not okay. Or, I don't want us to have that kind of relationship. And really letting them know, like, I care about you. This is why I'm saying no, or I care about you. This is why I'm bringing this up. And, it's a different way of relating that takes practice. And it can be hard if a child hasn't grown up around that, and then all of a sudden their whole environment's kind of changed and the communication structure in the house has changed. It throws everybody off. Okay, Angie asks, can you please give a thorough explanation of manipulation? Oh, that's a big question. I think in a nutshell, manipulation, it's one of the books that I'm working on right now that'll hopefully be out. What is this month? End of August. Hopefully be out by like middle of October at the latest. And that book is going to be called The Narcissist's Playbook. And it's all about manipulation and like different facets in our life. And it goes through like what manipulation is, what it isn't, who can be manipulative, different manipulation techniques, different strategies to get to kind of break free of these different manipulation techniques, and so on. But in a nutshell, manipulation, basically when there's an unequal balance of power in any type of dynamic where one person is like exuding influence over another. And when that happens, it's just everything comes to this screeching halt, and it's no longer a relationship of equals, whether it's friends or spouses or peers or what have you. It's this unequal dynamic where the person that has the power under position, they have a power under and a power over position. The person in the power under position is now coming from a place of like fear, fear, obligation, guilt, mainly fear, out of if they don't act a certain way, then there's going to be consequences. Manipulative behavior can be overt or it can be covert. It can be overt, very outright, and saying like, if you don't do this, then I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to hurt somebody you love. Or it can be more covert or hidden, meaning it can be more implied of you better do this or else, kind of a thing. So manipulation can go down in any number of ways. think there's lots of different types of people out there that can be manipulative. For some people, it's just kind of how they might not even be personality disordered. It's just how they think. Healthy assertive communication is a skill that's very rarely taught, and it's even less rarely modeled. And so most people are not comfortable with that. It's uncomfortable to be assertive, because when we have that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, we risk rejection. We open ourselves up to another person and we're saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, or this doesn't work for me, or can we talk about this? That can be uncomfortable because we're being vulnerable. And so a lot of people just aren't comfortable with that. And so they resort to being either passive, which they don't like any conflict or confrontation. So they go with the flow. They go along in order to get along. Or they become passive aggressive, which is doing little things to settle the score. Oh, you yelled at me. Well, now I'm going to burn your dinner and pretend like it's an accident, or I'm slamming doors, or I'm, going to say that I'm on your side, but then really kind of stir the pot and be more like actively against you. Or they become aggressive and they wait until stuff builds up and then they freak out and, just kind of explode. So, manipulation, a person may not have like malicious intention for being manipulative. Let's say you have your mother, I don't know, your mother is, oh, I need you at home. I need you to come, mow the lawn for me. And, and then it's like, oh my gosh. And it's just kind of laying all this guilt on to a person to do what they want you to do. So it can be more on like the mild end, or it can be really severe. If you don't have sex with me, then I'm going to try to get you fired, or you're not going to get this promotion. Or if you leave me, I'm going to make your life a living hell, or I'm not going to pay child support, or I'm not going to visit the kids, that kind of stuff. So. Mina Rose. Actually, let's back up. Daniel, that's a good question. Daniel Ray asks, establishing boundaries takes a degree of vulnerability. Yeah, I think in a sense, because to open yourself up and let somebody else know, like, hey, this doesn't work for me, it can be uncomfortable. Because I think honestly, a lot of people have dishonest communication with other people and with themselves. So if you think about any type of like maybe even friendship or like even work environment that you've been in, what tends to happen is people tend to tell a bunch of lies because they're not comfortable with the truth. The boss asks them to work late and they say, oh, I can't, I've got a softball game, when they don't. Or, oh, I can't, I'm working on a big project, when they're not working on a big project. Or instead of just saying, no, I can't, I have plans tonight, or, I was just really looking forward to, I just can't, whatever, like whatever the truth is, it's uncomfortable to just say like, no, I can't, not tonight. Doesn't work for me. Like that's uncomfortable. And most people aren't comfortable even with receiving that truth. So that's why people, I don't know, it's like a weird cycle, like then people feel, then the boss is like, oh, so it's weird. It's like even if the boss knows that you're lying about that you're on a softball team and that you play softball, it's this weird little dance that so many of us do. And it's just kind of to not it's to avoid tension. It's to avoid that stress. And so it's like you're lying to the boss accepts the lie knowing that you're lying, and then everybody kind of is able to save face. Like these little, and that's just on a small level of different ways people lie, but like setting boundaries and saying, I can't do that, just simply because whatever, like it, I would love to see your kids over the weekend, but I just don't have the energy. Like I love them. They're great and they're adorable, but it just wears me out. Can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people to say that. And because most people don't want to come across as like mean or rude or inconsiderate or whatever. So it takes practice, like asserting ourselves and just kind of saying the truth. But I think once you start doing that, and once you catch all of these little ways that we say yes when we really mean no, when you start catching yourself doing that and backing things up, even like the examples I'm giving, these might seem really mild, and they really are. In the grand scheme of things, they're very mild. But these should also be the situations that are the easiest to assert ourselves in, because they are so insignificant. And so it just takes practice. If we're running late for work, instead of saying, oh, I got caught in traffic, well, no, it was regular amounts of traffic. We just left 15 minutes late, right? Like just owning it. Yeah, you know what? I overslept. I didn't get out the door on time. You just own it. Or I would love to see the kids, and maybe you would even be okay with seeing them or watching them for a couple hours. But if you just can't do it for all weekend, then that's okay too. But it's uncomfortable because sometimes when we say no to people or we set boundaries, then they might get upset or offended. It's just, this is what I was talking about earlier. When we start becoming more assertive with people, and we start saying yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no, and start saying, hey, this is basically like, I can't do what you're asking, but I could do this, or this would work, or can we talk about this, or like, let's find a middle ground, or however, whatever's comfortable for you in that situation. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it totally changes the dynamic. No matter what the relationship is, at work, with friends, your significant other, whoever. Mina Rose says, please talk about Chris Watts. I'm so confused. He seemed so happy in all the pictures. And if he was abusive, why didn't Shanann ever complain about him? Okay, so Mina Rose, he might not have ever been abusive. There's just a really good chance that he was a guy living a double life. Her situation in many ways is very similar to both of my situations that I was in. Both Jack and Steve, we had amazing relationships. We got along famously, especially Jack and I. We were together for several years. We lived together. We had this amazing life. He was never abusive. There was never anything there. I'm pretty sure at the tail end of it, he was poisoning me or drugging me. He was doing something because I was getting sick. And I just happened to come across, fluke God thing, just happened to stumble across his double life. And I was floored. I would have never guessed in a million years that he, like, I didn't know. I mean, it was just wild to me. Like, when did he have time to do all of this? And he had been doing this since day one. And it wasn't until I contacted his ex-wife looking for answers, and we began talking. And that was when I realized we both, well, more so me, she already knew everything about him was a lie, everything. And she was the one that told me they were only married for 3 months when she began seeing all the cracks in his mask. And she told me, she's like, honey, if I were you, I would run and I would never look back. And that's exactly what I did. And that was terrifying because sometimes, so when I talk about like abuse is progressive and it tends to escalate. Sometimes it's not predictably progressive. Sometimes there isn't the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, the subtle put downs, like these kinds of things. I look back, there were things, hindsight being what it is, the whole time I was with Jack, he had been introducing me to people he was sleeping with. There was a lot of gaslighting going on. It didn't register as gaslighting at the time. it was just things didn't add up. Things didn't make sense. It was very malicious, like on his end. Everything that he was doing was just, it was just this realization of not only did this person not love me, he didn't even like me. Like there was no attachment on his end. And he had created this whole, that's the thing with a lot of cluster B personalities, especially when you're talking about like narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, they develop, not only do they often live double lives, they develop this fantasy world that they live in. And so sometimes other people get pulled into that fantasy life. So Jack had created this whole fantasy life with me, I think in large part because he was trying to earn this money that he thought I was going to get, which I kept telling him, like, there is no money. Like when I got divorced, I pretty much walked away from everything. I just wanted my life back. So he was on his best behavior thinking he was going to get this big payout. And when that didn't come, I was in the way. That's really what was going on. And then I began getting sick, really sick. So when the fact that so Chris Watts and her and Shannon's situation, she might have been married to what she thought was Prince Charming. And he might have been like that the whole time. And he might have come across as father of the year. And he might have just been living a double life the whole time. And when that double life either came out or he just got bored with playing the role of like awesome family man, then it was, this is boring now. I'm over it. They're disposable. They're in my way. And it's just this mentality of, my guess is that he either told her that he was leaving or that she might have known that he had been cheating in the past. She might have stumbled across his double life. Like, I don't know. But my guess is some of that kind of stuff came to the surface. He flipped out in a rage. And in his mind, this is my guess, was just like, I don't want any of this. It was very impulsive and, it's stupid on his end. Like, of course you're going to get caught. Right. But I think it was just that sense of entitlement of, I made these children, so therefore they're not really people. They're just extensions of me. And so since I can go make more children, they're just disposable. I'll just get more. And I'll just get another spouse. Like, I think that's really like where that level of thinking is. Like, there's no attachment there. And yeah, that kind of stuff is terrifying so when I talk about with people, when you see a lack of empathy in another person, if a person is pathologically cheating or lying, if they're showing you that they don't care, they're not emotionally invested in the relationship, they don't care. These kind of things can escalate quickly. And so I see people do these like different, like danger surveys or questionnaires that different domestic violence centers have. That concerns me. I feel like that can give a person a false sense of security because abuse is not predictably progressive. It can go from a person living a double life to murder quickly. So it's not like they go from, it doesn't always go from like verbal abuse to then emotional abuse to then possibly like financial abuse to then maybe some sexual abuse to then physical abuse. Like, it can jump and it can jump fast. And sometimes there's not enough warning. But if you realize that you're dealing with a person who just does not care, they're not emotionally invested in that relationship, I think that you're potentially in danger because it's only a matter that there's no connection there. And it's important that we see that stuff clearly and then just get out because there is no relationship there. And to a person like that who can go around and lie and cheat and all that, and they have no connection, then we're easily disposable. And it's, like I said, the stuff just escalates quickly. And Shannon says, yes, they have a whole fantasy land in their head. My mother told the same 25 odd stories, telling me stories about when I was a baby and toddler, showing she was a great mom. Now I see all the lies. Yeah. And Galactic MC says they basically are super predators. Narcs are super predators. Yes. There was a book, I forget which book it was, where he referred to them as intra-species predators. And I thought that was a very accurate. That's exactly what it is. It's just, they exploit other people. Like they prey on other people and then they just move to the next one. Like there is no, the level of connection a narcissist has for their target is a level of connection that, you know, a mountain lion has for a deer. Like there's nothing there. And so it's so important that we see that stuff clearly. So we're not in harm's way. And it's so hard because normal, decent people think that other people are normal, decent people. And especially when somebody's, you know, if in Shanann's case, if that's true, if that there wasn't really any outright abuse present, if it was all more like covert emotional abuse, if he was pathologically cheating and lying and, you know, having this whole other life that she didn't know about, you know, I could see how a person could think like, well, we just need to go to therapy. Like we have 2 kids together. We have one on the way. He's this really great dad. He must have issues. He must just be a sex addict. Like we just need to get this figured out. And it's like, just, you know, what you know is the tip of the iceberg, and that behavior can and does often escalate. Right. Missouri Cowboy says it's attachment disorder. They do not bond like a human does. Yep. I was watching a video the other night on like these different crime stories, and on just, I don't know, I'm fascinated with like understanding manipulation, like how people get sucked into it, how we can break free from it, like how we can slow it down and spot it. And it was this video of a guy who was he was kind of like a hitman. He would, but I don't know if he really murdered people. I think he might have murdered a few people, but he was the guy that, I don't know, drug dealers and tough, you know, thugs would call if people owed them money. They would call this guy and he would go break legs and beat up people and get them to pay. Anyways, so I think this guy had killed a few people in the process of doing this. Anyways, so he ended up going to jail for life. He didn't want to be in jail for life. He wanted the death sentence. And I think this was in Virginia, where I guess it's pretty difficult to get the death sentence. And they didn't give it to him. So he ends up killing his cellmate in jail. And they asked him, you know, well, what happened? And he's like, I want the death sentence. And then they still wouldn't give it to him. And so then they moved him to this maximum security prison, like a level 5 prison, where you're basically in your cell 23 hours a day. You've got 1 hour outside. And even then you're in like a dog run, like it's a cage, basically. He had manipulated this other prisoner. So again, all of the people in this population at this prison are all highly manipulative. Okay. Manipulates the guy in the cell next to him. They come up with this plan. He's like, hey man, let's do this thing where he's like, I'm in jail for life. So I've got nothing to lose. How about I choke you out? I'm going to make this thing with my sheet and I'm going to choke you out in this prison yard. And then what you can do is then you can sue the prison and get all of this money because this happened to you. And so, but what ended up happening is then he kill intentionally. So the guy gets close enough to the gate, right? And he puts the thing around his neck and he kills this other guy out in the yard. And um, again, like they're like, what? And he's like, I want the death sentence. And he just kept manipulating people. And it was just really, really wild as to how like manipulative um, they can be. No, I didn't see that. Up here is Narc says, Dana, did you see that they had to move Larry Nassar to Florida for his protection? I didn't see that. That guy. That guy. That's so, I wish him nothing but pain for the rest of his days. Just evil, just needs to be put down. Gigi says same-sex interactions and sexual addiction does not indicate homosexuality. Most true sex addicts recreate childhood trauma they experienced. Yeah, I think a lot of them, though, are just hypersexual and are bisexual. So, you know, and I think sometimes even with sex addiction, it's just more hedonistic. So it just depends. Like if a person, I think some people out there, it's hard for, I think, a lot of us to we see it as an, oh, this is an addiction, this is a problem. But I will tell you, like for Jack, he slept with dozens, if not hundreds of people the whole time we were together. And even though I would consider that an addiction, and I think anybody would be like, that dude, that's a problem, this is ridiculous. To him, it was just fun. It wasn't a problem in his life. It was a problem when he got caught. But for him, he liked having different people almost every single day of the week. And group sex and sex with men, sex with women, sex on film, sex. So I really don't think that he endured any childhood trauma to make him that way. I think he just liked the thrill of it all. So. Gary says, am I the only guy here? No, there's a few more on the chat. Okay, let's see. Mina Rose was saying, yeah, they're trying to say that he was gay now and had a gay lover, which could be possibly he was a sex addict and bisexual. Yeah, so I read that there's a message earlier on Facebook from a guy that he had an affair with. And I think the guy was completely right on. He's like, I probably wasn't the only one. There's probably other women too. And, you know, I think it bothers me when people, the whole sex addiction thing really by and large bothers me because not everybody that cheats or has sex with a bunch of people is a sex addict. And that concerns me because I really feel like the slippery slope there is not having people be appropriately accountable. Because then if we can make them a sex addict, all of a sudden now they're this compassionate, tragic figure that, and it flips the script. Instead of being accountable for their behavior, they're the baby bird with the broken wing and they've got this deep-seated issue. And it's sort of like, actually sometimes, especially when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, like it can just be that they just like to have sex and that they like to cheat and they like the thrill of somebody new and the thrill of getting caught and all of that. So just saying. Gigi says, yes, not all deviant sexual acting out is a sex addiction. Yeah. And honestly, and even if it is a sex addiction, it doesn't mean that we have to stand by them and be like, we need to go through all this therapy and we just need to, oh, you poor thing, you have, no control over your actions at all. It's ridiculous. Like we do have control over our actions. And, addiction makes a person, it's compulsive behavior. I mean, I get it, but like, there's still at the end of the day has to be accountability. If there's no accountability there, then there's no potential for a person to actually change. And So it's okay. And I guess what I'm saying is it's okay to have deal breakers. It's okay to have a sex addiction be a deal breaker and to not want to be a part of that. So exactly, Gigi, I agree. She says that 12 steps wouldn't work if there was no accountability and control. Yes. Yes, I agree. It's, until we can, and it's hard for any of us to admit that what we're doing is causing a problem in our life. I think we're human beings, we're really wired to think that we're doing the right thing all of the time. And it's really difficult for us to, because it creates that cognitive dissonance. If we're acting in a way, and this is why manipulators start rewriting reality, because human beings, we are wired for our thoughts and our actions to line up. If those two things don't line up, we experience cognitive dissonance, which comes across as confusion. And then the worse it gets, it comes across as mental anguish. And so if our action doesn't line up with our thought, then something, or if our thought doesn't line up with our action, something has to give. We either have to change our action to match our thought or change our thought to match our action. It's also what rewriting reality looks like in motion. So this is why you get a bunch of these excuses. This is why it seems like they all work from a playbook, because it's the same kind of cognitive process at work. So if you see a person who is cheating on their spouse, but if their internal belief system about who they are, if they're like, I'm not a cheater, but they're cheating on their spouse, they have to somehow bridge the gap between the divide between that thought and that action. And they're going to do so with some sort of justification. So they might tell themselves, well, I'm cheating because she doesn't pay enough attention to me at home, or I'm cheating because, then it gets like really twisted. I'm cheating because I think she might be cheating, even though like she's not cheating, and they're just projecting their own behavior. Or this is also why you get narcissists and sociopaths or just manipulators in general, that'll pick a fight for no freaking reason and then do the silent treatment. And then if you later find out, whenever they do silent treatment, it's because they're cheating. Oftentimes they're doing that because it's their way of rationalizing, no, I'm not cheating. I just had sex with that person when we were broken up. Do you see that? But do you see the level of crazy, like the mental gymnastics that needs to happen in order for them to rationalize their behavior? So that's when we talk about, like, you got to deal with the person who is comfortable in reality in order for there to be a relationship, because man, it's, you're getting deep down that rabbit hole of like, that's just not workable. Like, it's not even in the ballpark of workable. Gigi says, yeah, he projected his emotional and psychological abuse on me. Yep. Silent treatment as always. Yeah. It's, the only way off that crazy train is to not convince the driver that, hey, you're just, this is a crazy train, is to just jump off. Like, you just got to get off that crazy train, because that train conductor is crazy, and it's just, they're not going to stop. Touch Ski says he was only sexting for 7 years and no physical contact. Seriously? I got STD testing anyways. Is that even realistic? Personally, I think you're definitely right to get tested. That's the thing. If a person lies, then they're probably lying about other things as well. So I for sure wouldn't take anything a liar says at face value. And I think realistically, if a person is sexting somebody else, it's more likely than not going to progress into something physical, especially if the person's local. So And it's probably not just with that one person, frankly. I mean, 7 years is a long time just to keep sexting with somebody. So I wouldn't buy it either. And even still, even if they were quote unquote only sexting for 7 years, that's 7 years of lying to your face every single day and keeping a massive secret and relationship destroying behavior for 7 years. Like that alone, I wouldn't want to be with somebody that could look me in the eye every single day for 7 years and live a double life like that. Like, and I wouldn't want to be, this was one of the things I had told Jack when I found out about his double life. Because at first it was a bunch of like excuses and kind of, I don't even know, it was so freaking weird. Like just, oh man, I'd never experienced anything like that before. And just there was no sincere remorse. It was just the most bizarre thing. And I had told him, I said, I can't stay because I could never trust you again. And I know I would be a jealous, insecure, unhinged mess if I were to stay. And I would want to know, I would insist that you live a life of total transparency. I would be so far up your butt all the time, wanting to know who you're talking to, where you're at, when you're going to be home, all of that. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to become that. So I've got to go. And then of course, talking to his ex-wife, it was like, yeah, it's like, it's not me. Like this wasn't a relationship issue. Like this was an individual issue. He'd had a long-standing pattern of this. Okay, let's see here. JJ is saying, if I make any waves and don't manage this, her son will kill me. Has threatened me already. I've lost 17 years investment in our home, and now I have nothing. I would start keeping, if you haven't already, I'd start keeping a paper trail of everything and documenting. If ideally, if her son is like texting you or emailing you or whatever, just documenting all of this, I would go talk to an attorney without her knowing and let them know the situation and see kind of what you can do, how you can start protecting your assets, any remaining assets now. So I am so sorry that you're going through this. It's hard. It's hard to pick up the pieces and rebuild again, but it is possible. It is possible. There's lots of people that are in very similar situations as you, and that you can move forward. Let's see. Oh, geez. Missouri Cowboy says, my favorite rationalizing is when somebody cheats on someone because they were cheated on, so the other will feel the pain of betrayal. Wrap your head around that one. Well, I think sometimes with when you have two people, especially if you have like a pathological, so I saw this in a friend of mine. She was married to this guy who's textbook narcissist, and he, I'm sure, had been cheating on her since day one. But he had gotten another woman pregnant. And that was the first time that she realized that he had been cheating. Of course, he minimized it. Oh, they only had sex together once. It was nothing, blah, blah, blah. Then she was devastated. She loved him so much. And they had 2 kids together. And she would describe his behavior. He was aloof. Like there's just kind of this cruel, cold indifference. Didn't want to talk about any of the affair. Didn't want to, he would say one thing and then do another. He'd say he wasn't going to strip clubs and then she'd find out he was in strip clubs. He'd say he looked at porn just obsessively, like something that you would expect from, I don't know, like a teenage guy. She would ask me, she's like, he was just on looking at porn all day, every day. It was, like I said, like, this is not something a 30-year-old man does to this extent. And just really hypersexual. And anyways, she stayed with him and it was killing her to stay with him. She began drinking a lot. She began taking prescription, like anxiety, like abusing prescription anxiety pills and like prescription pain medication. She was working all the time. She gained a bunch of weight. She just was not coping with things. And she didn't want to leave, but it was sort of like she couldn't stay. And she ended up having an affair like a year later. But and that was when I was like, girl, you've got to get out of there. This is not who you are. This is sinking you like a stone. She actually had a series of affairs, but that would have never happened had he not cheated. I think those affairs was her way of settling the score. This is where things they start snowballing and they get really twisted. She was, I think, trying to settle the score and to convince herself to stay, because then that was her way of being like, well, yeah, he cheated, but I also cheated. So now because I also cheated, I can't be mad at him for cheating. Like, I really think that was her rationale. They finally ended up getting a divorce, finally, like 4 or 5 years later, but it was a long 4 or 5 years and it was full of even more women. It was ridiculous. They would have sex. He'd roll over and start texting other women. I mean, just his he just got to a point where I was just disgusting. He just is such a disgusting human being, no regard, and threw away a good wife and a good family. And and they were such a cute couple, there's just no need for that other than he just liked that instant gratification of cheating. Yeah. And they don't care. Nikki was saying, yeah, my ex did the same thing. My son was 4 and said, that's what daddy watches when mommy's not home. She says, they don't care what their kids see. Yeah. I think a lot of people that are in emotionally, any type of abusive relationship, they start to take on different survival skills. And sometimes, I think oftentimes people start doing drinking, drugs, food, spending money, having sex, cheating, doing these kinds of things. And so when we've talked about this before, but if you're in a relationship where you start seeing scary or disturbing personality changes within yourself, and you're feeling like I'm trying to cope with my life, then I know it's not easy to leave, but these are some signs that what's going on is a problem. So if you feel like your relationship is bringing out the worst in you, or is like, you're like, I don't normally cheat or lie or, drink excessively or, use prescription pills or abuse prescription pills, or do these things to escape, and you're doing it now. Like these are some wake up calls. Like this is a problem. Yeah. And Farah says, yeah, you take on your abuser's qualities. And yeah, and sometimes even too, like the verbal abuse. And I get it. If you're with a person who's stonewalling you, who's had this bad behavior, they won't talk about it. They won't discuss it. Anytime you bring it up, they tell you that you've got trust issues, or that you're living in the past, or that you're looking for a fight, and nothing gets resolved. That stuff is infuriating, and it can push any normal, calm, reasonable person over the edge. So I get it. I've been there. And again, these are some signs, like normal people who want to work towards a solution work towards a solution. So if you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall and you can't get through to someone, it's not the communication that's the issue. It's they're disinterested in resolving it. They're intentionally trying to throw you off track and change the subject and shift the blame back onto you and not resolve it because they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have consequences for their actions. They just want to do whatever they want to do, and they want you to just get off their back. So, but yeah, that, like, if you're finding yourself, you're like, you know, I don't normally yell and I don't normally act this way. And this is a problem. Then these are some other signs that, you know, it's something needs to change. Thank you, Malta, for the live stream donation. Says, thanks for tonight's session, Dana. And I'm grateful to be here with everyone. Well, welcome. And thank you for being here. And thank you guys all for just supporting each other and everything that goes on in the chat. I just think it's validating, and it's just so nice that we can have all of you. Have 156 people watching right now. There's all these people from all over the world that can come together and just listen and support and encourage each other. It's just awesome. I just love that. I think it's so cool. Yes, I agree. Della says, yeah, the Chris Watts story reminds me of Susan Smith back in the 90s that drowned her 2 boys in her car because her boyfriend didn't want kids. Yeah, and she's doing life. Yep, it's interesting, the stuff that interesting and terrifying and just heartbreaking, the stuff that these people do, you know, and how they view. I just don't understand how you could view. I guess it's the innocence of the children that get me the most. I can see getting upset, or even I can see stuff between 2 adults going south, even if there's no abuse present. Like I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not rationalizing it, but I get that more than I get violence against children, especially your own children. I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that. It's just heartbreaking. My heart goes out so much to her family, to Shannon's family. I can't imagine, you know, not only like losing their daughter, losing their grandchildren, losing, you know, the baby that she was pregnant with, but then now him dragging her name through the mud and trying to accusing her of killing the 2 daughters and saying that, you know, basically he killed her because he was upset because she killed the kids, and just dragging her name through the mud is just, it's beyond. I mean, it's just so much. Like, I don't even know how her family is even coping with that. It's just heartbreaking. Yeah, Nikki says, yes. How can you not care about your own children? You know, it's interesting, like looking back on my relationship with Jack, that was one of the first, like, top 5 signs that something was off, that I should have like ended things right there. When we had first started dating, I was planning on moving. And so anyways, so we had been dating for a couple months, and he had a daughter. He was from Europe, and we were living here in the United States. He had a daughter in Europe, and she was about 5 years old at the time. And he told me this story, this total lie, you know, that the mother, that she'd gotten pregnant and that she was an alcoholic and that she had all these problems. And he was always the one taking care of that little girl, and that he loved her with his whole heart and blah, blah, blah. And that the mom had kicked him out, or that he had to leave or something, but that he had nothing to do with this little girl. And I remember thinking like that was kind of odd. But then what was even more odd is then I ended up moving. He had packed, the only thing that he had from his daughter was this little stuffed animal, and he'd put it in my suitcase. And so I didn't realize this until I was unpacking and I saw that. And I remember thinking, there was kind of two thoughts I had, like, wow, this guy must really have feelings for me, because again, who would do that? The only thing that you have from your child that is so far away, that you give to a woman that you've only been dating for a few months. And then the second thought was, maybe, like, who does that? I guess part of me was flattered, but then part of me was like really disturbed, that he would so freely give away something like that to a woman he didn't know. And, hindsight being what it is, I think he got that woman pregnant intentionally, built up this whole fantasy of being like Prince Charming, because that's his MO. That's what he does. And then she probably caught him sleeping with anybody and everybody. And he probably thought she actually did have money. So I think he was thinking that he would earn it and was going to be like this amazing boyfriend. And she caught on with all of this. He thought he was going to trap her with a baby. And she told him to get to stepping, and then said, I want you, basically, you come back here and, like, it's not going to be good. So don't come back here. That's my guess as to what happened. Crazy. Galactic MC says he's got a track. It's Left Me Thoughts on SoundCloud. Yeah, I will check it out. Let me write it down. Hold on. Yeah, I will check that out. Okay, let's see here. I think we are about at time. Lauren says, what if someone you are texting says they might want to marry you before you have met them? He seems nice, but that scares me. Yeah, that's too much too soon. I mean, best case scenario, it's a sign he's either being kind of joking, but even still, like, it's if it's even close to being sincere, it's immature. I think normal kind of functional adults understand everything is easy to get into. It's much harder to get out of. Like, there's the marriage it requires work. It requires more than just love. It requires, kind of like chemistry and connection and communication. And like, there's a lot of other elements at play based on, oh, you just seem like a really cool person that I'm attracted to. Like, there's so much more than that. And I think a person that really knows what, I guess, stuff like that, like that kind of, oh, I just am so in love with you and blah, blah. To me, if the person's so quick to say things like that, to me, it just shows like they don't have any true understanding of what commitment or a relationship really is. Because of course, like any time you first meet a person and then there's chemistry, it feels like that. Like, that's just lust. That's not anything to build anything on. Like, those feelings go away. So I would pay attention to, how does this person, and I think when you're going about trying to build a relationship with somebody, you really want to see them in a wide variety of ways. Like, how do they handle being sick? How do they handle money? How how are they around their friends? What kind of friends do they have? If they've got a bunch of friends that have like no moral compass and they're just kind of, skeezy people, like odds are they're skeezy people. They're the same, like birds of a feather kind of a thing. So how do they handle stress? How do they handle frustration? How do they handle you setting boundaries? How do they handle you having friends and your life and your hobbies? And how do they handle just disagreements in general? How do they treat people that can't do anything for them? How do they treat the waitress or the waiter or um, homeless people? Or, and that's, and this is just a broad brush thing. Like, but these are just some things to look for. Like, spend time in a wide variety of environments. Go do a panic room together or go bowling or see how do they handle losing and working as a team and all of these things. It's important. So yeah, I've dated, there was two guys I dated a while back, years ago, and I think they were both like normal, nice, decent people, but they both really wanted to settle down and get married. And very quickly, like within the first few dates, were really wanting to get serious. And it freaked me out so much because, and it made me feel like I was there just to fill a spot in their life. Like they didn't really, obviously, they didn't love me. They didn't even know me, but it was they were very quick to just be like, start kind of hinting around about that and wanting to just move quickly. And I was flattered. I think that they were sincere to a point, but I think more what was driving their behavior is that they were just, I think they were lonely and they had kids and they just, I mean, I get it. I can see feeling that same way where you just want to start a life with somebody, but I want somebody who loves me, not who just loves the idea of being married or loves the idea of having help with the kids or a warm body around, So, yeah, stuff like that. Deborah says, talking about there's a lot of mean people in this world who ignore the disabled like they don't exist. Yes, that kind of stuff. Or for me, even if a person really finds, there's all kinds of just kind of mean jokes and stuff like that out on YouTube or whatever. If people really find that kind of stuff, um, just being mean to other people, if they find it funny or um, yeah, I guess, yeah, like if they're demeaning to other people, no matter who, like if they've got an issue with like frankly, like seriously, anybody, if they've got an issue with like disabled people or, minorities or, you know, poor people, I mean, anybody, if it's they're kind of women, men, it's people a certain sexual orientation, if there's that power over mentality or that they feel okay with being really hateful towards group or groups of people, like I just don't even want anybody like that in my life. Like that's such a turn off. Like it's ugly. It's just how they are around animals is another kind of can be another big sign. Just respect. I guess the thing is there respect there, like just common decency towards other living beings. Is that there? Okay. Oh, I guess there was a troll on the live stream. I missed the person last week and I meant to see what was going on. But thanks for getting them. Oh, Kelly has a question about what creates a narcissist. So we'll answer that and then we'll go into our meditation thing. So I don't know if I don't think, here's the thing with psychology is it's not a hard science. It's a soft science, which means that there's many different factors at play. And so with narcissism, there's different theories about kind of what makes a person a certain way, but at the end of the day, it also is kind of a wild card. I mean, generally, any of us, we're all shaped by our different experiences in life. And generally, we're shaped more so with our childhood experiences because those childhood experiences really set the programming for our later adult experiences. So if a person grows up in any type of like abuse or they experience trauma as a child, then if they're spoiled, which is also really considered child abuse, kind of a strange form of child abuse, but it's still child abuse because it denies the child the ability to grow up and basically like learn skills. So if a child's handed everything, then they're really kind of cheated out of like the struggle of figuring things out for themselves. So that's why being spoiled is a problem. But so if a person grows up in trauma, like odds are they're going to have a lot of dysfunctional coping methods with that. And this kind of stuff can shape a person's personality. However, here's my 2 cents on it. I really don't think that it has to even be anything traumatic. Like, yes, it doesn't help if a person's molested or abused or bullied at school, these kinds of things. But at the same time, there's lots of people that have those experiences that don't turn out to be narcissists. So to say that, hurt people is a very like reductionist approach to understanding how a person becomes a narcissist or a sociopath. So here's my take on it. I really think what it is that people that we as a whole are, even though we have the capacity to be incredibly resilient, we're also incredibly fragile. And that narcissism, when a person becomes so self-absorbed that it's all about their wants and their needs, and it's to the exclusion of everybody else, it's almost like these walls go up. And I think these walls go up in response to some sort of either feelings of inadequacy, shame, or just entitlement, like if a person's spoiled. So if a person's feeling these ways, that's really going to shape their behavior. And I don't think it needs to come from, like I said, like a long, like extensive trauma history. I think it can come from, sometimes I think it can really come from a few comments here and there by people that can just radically change the way a person perceives their environment. There was a little boy, just kind of on the same vein, a little boy the other day, 9 years old, who just came out to his mother that he thought he was gay. And he began dressing very effeminate at school and he got teased for 4 days about it. And he had one kid at his school, I guess, tell him that he should kill himself. And so he did. And this little boy just committed suicide. And so, I think we tend to have this thought that these things have to go on for like a really long time in order to have a negative impact, and they don't. It can radically direct a person's behavior in a short amount of time. So I think with, I don't know, it's like a person realized, and there's just all these different factors that could be, maybe they were ignored or neglected at home. And so they develop this false sense of self where they feel superior because they feel so inadequate at home. Maybe they have the sense of entitlement. Maybe they were just spoiled rotten. Maybe they are just on the defensive. I mean, I think about the narcissists and sociopaths that have been in my life. Like, one in particular had he grew up in a home, they had a farm, he was an only child. So he basically didn't have a childhood. He was working from a young age. His mother had emphysema and was bedridden his whole life. So he was either helping to take care of her. He couldn't really have fun. He couldn't have friends over. He just really didn't have a childhood, and they didn't have a lot of money. And so he was just very lonely. And it's interesting, like, knowing that about him, I can totally see how the way he is as an adult. And he's just, whatever he wants, he gets, and he's got the money to do that. And he justifies his behavior because I think for so long he wasn't able to get anything that he wanted. And that's tragic, but that doesn't make his behavior okay. And it for sure doesn't make it workable for a relationship. So, like, that was kind of his situation. There's been other people who, I think, there's another YouTuber, I won't say who it is, but like, I think she's really created this whole fantasy life of herself being kind of this like spiritual guru, and has this totally delusional and stuff that's like flat out not true. And I really think it was her parents were never home, and she like had this really active imagination and created this whole story about being getting kidnapped by a cult and just all kinds of stuff that if you dive into her story, you're like, this is just not true. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's weird. Like, how does the brain make these connections? And it's scary because then when you start getting delusions like that, Meredith, yes. When you start getting delusions like that, and then it's really, it's just really wild, because then it's there. I mean, talk about rewriting reality. Like, it's not even reality. It's not even close to reality. So, it's scary. It's really scary. And then you've got this person with this real pathological personality at that steering wheel, and you've got a bunch of other vulnerable people around. And it's those things tend to not end well. So yeah, I think cult leaders in general. But of course, that's the thing with cult leaders, is cult leaders don't tend to think that they're cult leaders. So, they just think, I don't know. It's scary. Okay. So let's, and here's the thing too, let me just touch on this real quick, and then we will do the meditation thing. Understanding narcissists, I think I get it. I get it. I was totally there, where I'm like, I need to really understand and figure out like sociopaths and what made them this way, and how do they operate, and all of these things. But I will tell you, it's important for us to also spend time on examining our vulnerabilities and how we got roped in by these people. Because a lot of people tend to think like, oh, it was a kind of a hit and run accident. I got tangled up with this person who was a total wackadoo, compulsive, pathological personality. I didn't see it coming. It can feel like a hit and run, but there's lots of these people out there. And I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying that to prepare you, because it's really important that we examine, because most people have had more than just this one person in their life. Most people have had several. And so examining, like, how are these people continuing to get into my life? Like, where, it's It's like having windows and doors that don't have weather stripping. Like where are the cracks that these people are coming in? Because I need to work on this. And sometimes it's boundaries and standards and deal breakers. Sometimes it's paying attention to our instincts, our intuition. Sometimes it's just examining our programming about like commitment and friendships and relationships and the need for concrete proof that a problem's actually a problem. Like, so sometimes it's just limiting beliefs that we might have that can examining those can really help set us free. So not to say that this is any of this is like our fault. It's not. I mean, my goodness, normal, decent people just don't see this kind of stuff coming. So, and even like that story I was telling earlier about the prisoner that convinced the other prisoner to basically let him kill him, even not so normal, decent people can be manipulated. So these people, manipulators, are just really good at doing what they're doing. And, you know, all any of us can do is the best we can do and just try to squeeze out as many lessons as we can and then just take those and move forward and try to build a better life for ourselves. So, okay. With that said, let's take some time. We'll do our guided meditation. We are over on time, so I apologize. But let's take some time, get comfortable. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you just heard my neck, but that did not sound good. If you're in a spot where you can lay down, now would be a good time to do that. Or if you're sitting down, take some time to get comfortable. Let's take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And turning your attention inward, listening to your heartbeat. Being fully present in this moment. And this is your time. This is time for you to relax and to be fully present in this moment. And continuing to breathe. And bringing your attention up to your forehead. And progressively working your way down, relaxing any areas that you come across that are holding any tension, stress, or pain. Relaxing your eyes, your cheeks, your jaw, your neck. Allowing the tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth and letting your jaw fall open. Relaxing your shoulders, your arms, your hands, Feeling the weight of your arms as they fall to your side. Allowing your shoulders to fall down and back. Opening up your chest, realizing that you are safe right now and that it's okay to relax. Relaxing your chest, your stomach, and your hips. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Relaxing your legs, your calves, and your feet. And again, allowing your feet to fall in whatever position is the most comfortable. Remembering to breathe. And feeling the heaviness of your body with each exhale. Being fully present in this moment. Now let's visualize a waterfall, a beautiful, sparkling silver waterfall. Realizing that as you walk through this waterfall, that it will wash away any negativity, fear, anxiety, or pain that you might have, or any that you're ready to let go of. And as you move forward, looking at this magnificent waterfall, realizing that you do have quite a few things that it's time, that you're ready to let that just wash away. As you walk through, visualizing this water just cleansing you and all of that debris, the pain, the hurt, the anger, almost like dried mud, just easily just slides right off of your skin. Feeling so clean and refreshed. Revitalized and energized as you come out on the other side. Just reconnecting to everything that is good and right in the world and good and right within yourself. Realizing that there is so much that is right about you, that you have value. You have value because you're here. You are a living being and you are here. Now let's take a moment and just honor yourself, honor the struggle, honor how far you've come. You've come a long way and you are a warrior. You really, really are. Acknowledging within yourself of your strengths and everything, all of that inner strength within you that's gotten you to this place today. Just acknowledging that. And if you're comfortable, giving yourself a big energetic hug. Just letting yourself know that you are loved, that you matter, and that you have value. And that you are worth being treated with dignity and respect. That there is a lot that is right about you. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. So thank you for joining us. And don't forget, book club is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you guys then. We're going to be discussing the book DBT Made Simple. So see ya tomorrow. Okay. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.